In the eastern reaches of the galaxy, where the light of distant stars grows dim and ancient secrets lie buried beneath layers of cosmic dust, stands the crown world of Solemnace. This tomb world serves as both fortress and gallery to one of the most enigmatic figures in the Necron hierarchy, Trazyn the Infinite, Overlord of Solemnace and self-appointed guardian of galactic history. Unlike his fellow Necron nobles who dream of reconquest and the restoration of their ancient empire, Trazyn has embraced a fundamentally different philosophy, one that places preservation above destruction and collection above conquest. Trazyn's origins trace back to the height of the Necron tier civilization, when he served as a member of the powerful Nihilak dynasty. During those flesh-bound millennia before biotransference, he held considerable influence within the dynasty's court structure, demonstrating the keen intellect and obsessive attention to detail that would later define his post-awakening existence. The Nihilak dynasty itself commanded respect among the Necron tier noble houses, controlling vast territories and wielding significant political power during the final wars against the Old Ones. As a high-ranking noble within this dynasty, Trazyn possessed both the resources and authority necessary to pursue his developing fascination with historical artifacts and cultural preservation. The great sleep that followed biotransference affected each Necron lord differently, and Trazyn's experience proved particularly transformative. While many of his contemporaries entered their tomb complexes with minds focused on military conquest and the eventual reclamation of their lost empire, Trazyn's consciousness underwent a subtle but profound shift during those millions of years of dormancy. The combination of his pre-existing scholarly interests and the unique way his engrams processed the extended hibernation period resulted in an awakening unlike that of his peers. When Solemnace finally stirred to life in the 41st millennium, its overlord emerged with priorities that would have seemed incomprehensible to his ancient self. Solemnace itself reflects Trazyn's transformed nature. The tomb world's surface bears the standard Necron architectural hallmarks, towering pyramidal structures of living metal that gleam with an inner phosphorescent glow, vast underground complexes that stretch for hundreds of kilometers beneath the planet's crust, and defensive systems capable of repelling entire Imperial battle fleets. However, beneath this conventional exterior lies something far more extraordinary. The world's tomb complexes have been extensively modified and expanded to accommodate Trazyn's ever-growing collection, creating a labyrinthine network of galleries, storage chambers, and preservation vaults that dwarf even the most ambitious Imperial museums. The transformation of Solemnace from a standard tomb world into a cosmic repository required centuries of careful planning and construction. Trazyn employed legions of canoptech constructs to hollow out additional chambers, install specialized stasis fields, and create the complex environmental systems necessary to preserve organic specimens. The tomb world's power grid was expanded exponentially to support the massive energy requirements of maintaining thousands of temporal stasis fields simultaneously. Deep within the planet's core, fusion reactors borrowed from captured Imperial technology work alongside traditional Necron power sources to ensure an uninterrupted energy supply for his precious collections. What truly sets Trazyn apart from other Necron nobles is his fundamental rejection of the traditional Necron approach to galactic dominion. Where his contemporaries see the younger races as obstacles to be eliminated or slaves to be dominated, Trazyn views them as fascinating subjects worthy of study and preservation. This philosophical shift represents one of the most significant departures from orthodox Necron thinking in the 41st millennium. His fellow overlords often regard him with suspicion or outright disdain for what they perceive as an abandonment of their species' rightful destiny as galactic rulers. The practical implications of this philosophical transformation are evident in Trazyn's military campaigns and diplomatic interactions. Rather than launching wars of extermination against human worlds or Xeno civilizations, he conducts precisely targeted raids designed to acquire specific artifacts or individuals for his collection. His forces strike with surgical precision, often leaving the broader population unharmed, while spiriting away historically significant figures or culturally important objects. Imperial records contain dozens of reports describing mysterious attacks where entire regiments vanish without a trace, leaving behind only confused survivors and empty barracks. Trazyn's collecting methodology demonstrates a level of sophistication that few other Necron lords could match or would bother to attempt. He maintains extensive intelligence networks throughout the galaxy, utilizing everything from infiltrated servo skulls to corrupted astropathic communications to identify potential acquisitions. His agents, both mechanical and occasionally biological, operate across multiple sectors, gathering information about upcoming battles, political developments, and cultural events that might present collection opportunities. The Overlord has been known to spend decades preparing for a single acquisition, studying his targets with the dedication of a master scholar. The scope of Trazyn's collection defies easy categorization. His galleries contain everything from perfectly preserved space marine captains locked in temporal stasis to entire sections of Hive city architecture, complete with their original inhabitants frozen in time. Rare Xenos artifacts occupy chambers alongside Imperial relics, while specimens of extinct species share space with captured examples of advanced technology. The collection includes both the monumentally significant and the seemingly mundane, reflecting Trazyn's belief that every aspect of galactic civilization deserves preservation for future study. The title, The Infinite, carries multiple layers of meaning that reflect both Trazyn's nature and his ambitions. On its most literal level, the name references his apparent immortality and the theoretically endless nature of his collecting activities. Unlike mortal beings whose lifespans limit their ability to accumulate knowledge and artifacts, Trazyn possesses the temporal luxury to pursue acquisitions across millennia. His Necron physiology grants him effective immortality, while his noble rank provides access to the resources necessary to maintain and expand his collection indefinitely. However, the title also speaks to Trazyn's unique approach to existence itself. Where other Necron lords define themselves through conquest, territorial expansion, or the pursuit of their species' ancient glory, Trazyn has embraced the infinite nature of knowledge and history. His collection represents an attempt to capture and preserve the infinite complexity of galactic civilization, creating a permanent record of cultures, individuals, and events that would otherwise be lost to time. In this sense, he has become infinite not through conquest, but through the accumulation of infinite knowledge and experience. The psychological implications of Trazyn's transformation during the Great Sleep continue to influence his behavior in ways that distinguish him from other awakened Necron nobles. His obsessive collecting represents more than simple hoarding or academic interest. It reflects a fundamental need to impose order and permanence on a galaxy characterized by constant change and destruction. Each new acquisition serves as a small victory against entropy, a preserved moment of perfection that will endure long after its original context has crumbled to dust. This compulsive preservation instinct manifests in behaviors that often confuse or frustrate other Necron lords. Trazyn has been known to interrupt his own military campaigns to secure a particularly interesting specimen, sometimes allowing enemy forces to escape rather than risk damage to a potential acquisition. His tomb complexes operate under strict protocols designed to minimize any risk to his collection, with multiple redundant systems ensuring that even catastrophic damage to Solemnace itself would not result in the loss of his most prized specimens. The relationship between Trazyn and the broader Necron hierarchy remains complex and often strained. While his noble rank within the Nihilak dynasty grants him considerable autonomy, his unconventional priorities and methods frequently put him at odds with more traditional overlords. Some view his activities as a harmless eccentricity, while others consider his preservation of younger races to be a form of heresy against Necron supremacy. This tension has occasionally erupted into open conflict, though Trazyn's formidable defenses and strategic value as an intelligence gatherer have thus far protected him from serious reprisals. Despite these philosophical differences, Trazyn's unique position within Necron society provides him with advantages that more conventional nobles lack. His extensive knowledge of galactic affairs and his vast network of information sources make him a valuable ally when properly motivated. Other overlords have learned to approach him not as a subordinate or rival, but as a specialist whose services can be negotiated for the right price, usually paid in rare artifacts or access to historically significant events. The transformation of Trazyn from a conventional Necron noble into the galaxy's most dedicated archaeologist represents one of the most fascinating examples of how the Great Sleep affected individual Necron consciousness. His journey from conquest-focused dynastic lord to obsessive collector illustrates the complex ways in which millions of years of dormancy could reshape fundamental aspects of Necron psychology and motivation. The true marvel of Solemnace lies not in its surface monuments or defensive installations, but in the vast network of galleries that honeycomb the tomb world's interior. These subterranean complexes stretch across continents, delving deep into the planet's mantle, where specialized excavation protocols have carved out chambers of impossible scale. The galleries themselves represent the culmination of Necron architectural mastery, merged with Trazyn's obsessive requirements for preservation and display. Unlike the standardized tomb complexes found on other Necron worlds, Solemnace's interior spaces have been custom designed to accommodate collections that span the breadth of galactic civilization. The primary gallery networks follow a tesseract labyrinth construction that defies conventional three-dimensional architecture. Necron dimensional science allows these spaces to exist in a state of controlled spatial distortion, where corridors can extend for kilometers while occupying only a fraction of that distance in real space. Walking through these galleries creates a disorienting experience even for beings accustomed to advanced technology. Passages that appear to stretch in straight lines for hundreds of meters suddenly reveal themselves to be following complex geometric patterns that fold back upon themselves through higher dimensional space. The effect allows Trazyn to maximize storage capacity while maintaining the aesthetic presentation he demands for his collection. The construction materials themselves reflect the sophisticated engineering required to maintain such structures across millennia. Living metal forms the primary framework, its self-repairing properties essential for maintaining structural integrity in spaces subject to constant dimensional manipulation. The walls incorporate specialized alloys that can interface directly with stasis field generators, creating seamless transitions between normal space and the temporal suspension fields that preserve Trazyn's specimens. Phosphorescent veins run through the metal, providing illumination that can be adjusted to complement different types of displays, while ensuring that organic specimens receive appropriate light spectra for long-term preservation. The tesseract labyrinth design serves multiple purposes beyond simple space optimization. The complex geometric patterns create natural security barriers that confuse intruders while providing Trazyn with multiple escape routes and defensive positions. Sections of the galleries can be isolated instantly through phase gate activation, trapping hostile forces in pocket dimensions where they pose no threat to the collection. The labyrinthine structure also allows for specialized environmental zones, with different sections maintaining the precise atmospheric conditions required for various types of specimens. Each major gallery complex focuses on specific categories within Trazyn's collection, though the organizational system follows principles that would challenge even the most dedicated Imperial archivists. The halls of Flesh House living specimens from across the galaxy, with environmental systems capable of maintaining everything from the frigid conditions preferred by ice world inhabitants to the high radiation environments required for certain mutant strains. The chambers of war contain military artifacts and preserved battlefield scenes, including entire sections of fortifications, complete with their defending forces frozen at the moment of capture. The stasis crypts represent the most technologically sophisticated aspect of Trazyn's preservation systems. These specialized chambers utilize temporal manipulation technology that extends far beyond simple cryogenic preservation. Each crypt contains a localized temporal field that effectively removes its contents from the normal flow of time, preventing not just physical decay, but also the subtle quantum degradation that affects all matter over extended periods. The technology required to maintain such fields draws enormous amounts of energy, necessitating dedicated power distribution networks throughout the gallery complexes. The construction of individual stasis crypts follows standardized protocols developed through millennia of experimentation and refinement. Each unit consists of a containment chamber surrounded by multiple layers of temporal field generators, environmental control systems, and monitoring equipment. The innermost chamber maintains perfect atmospheric conditions for its specific occupant, while the temporal fields create a bubble of slowed time that reduces the aging process to virtually nothing. Advanced specimens receive additional protective measures, including psychic dampening fields for individuals with warp-based abilities and specialized containment protocols for particularly dangerous subjects. The preservation process itself requires careful calibration to account for the unique characteristics of each specimen. Living beings must be placed in stasis at the precise moment when their biological systems achieve optimal stability, typically during periods of rest or unconsciousness. The temporal fields then maintain this state indefinitely, preserving not just physical condition, but also mental patterns and memory engrams. Trazyn has perfected techniques for maintaining stasis fields around specimens that would normally resist such containment, including space marines whose enhanced physiology might otherwise disrupt the delicate temporal matrices. Monitoring systems throughout the stasis crypts provide constant surveillance of preservation conditions and specimen status. Automated protocols can adjust environmental parameters in response to subtle changes in biological indicators, ensuring that each preserved being remains in optimal condition regardless of external circumstances. The monitoring networks also serve security functions, alerting Trazyn to any attempts at unauthorized access or potential system failures that might threaten his collection. The dimensional pocket technology employed throughout Solemnace represents some of the most advanced spatial manipulation techniques in Necron science. These pocket dimensions allow Trazyn to house collections that would be physically impossible to contain within the tomb world's actual volume. Entire Imperial Guard regiments occupy spaces no larger than standard storage chambers, while massive Xenos war machines rest in pockets that appear as simple wall alcoves from the outside. The technology works by creating stable tiers in space-time that connect to artificially generated pocket universes, each tailored to house specific types of specimens or artifacts. Creating and maintaining these dimensional pockets requires precise control over gravitational fields and space-time curvature. The process begins with the generation of controlled singularities that serve as anchor points for the dimensional tiers. These micro-black holes are contained within specialized housing units that prevent them from affecting the surrounding gallery structure, while allowing them to maintain the necessary gravitational distortions. The pocket dimensions themselves exist in a state of controlled expansion, growing or contracting as needed to accommodate new additions to the collection. The interface between normal space and the dimensional pockets utilizes phase gate technology adapted from standard Necron teleportation systems. These gates can be activated selectively, allowing Trazyn to access specific pockets while keeping others sealed. The activation process requires biometric identification and specific command protocols, ensuring that only authorized personnel can access the collection. Emergency systems can instantly seal all dimensional pockets in the event of a security breach, effectively removing the entire collection from accessible space until the threat is neutralized. Each dimensional pocket maintains its own environmental systems and preservation protocols, allowing for specialized storage conditions that would be impossible to achieve in normal space. Vacuum-dwelling species can be housed in perfect void conditions, while specimens requiring extreme temperatures or atmospheric compositions receive precisely controlled environments. The pocket dimensions also provide natural protection against external threats, as they exist outside normal space-time and cannot be affected by conventional weapons or psychic attacks. The security measures protecting Trazyn's galleries represent a comprehensive defense network that combines active and passive systems with autonomous defensive constructs. Canoptech constructs form the backbone of the security apparatus, with specialized variants designed specifically for gallery protection duties. Canoptech Wraiths patrol the Tesseract corridors, using their phase shift capabilities to move through solid walls and surprise intruders. Their whip coils can disable most biological threats without causing permanent damage that might affect potential additions to the collection. Canoptech Spiders serve as mobile command nodes for the security network, coordinating defensive responses and managing repair protocols for damaged gallery systems. These constructs can rapidly deploy additional defensive measures, including temporary stasis fields to contain intruders and emergency barriers to protect vulnerable collection areas. Their scarab swarms provide constant surveillance throughout the gallery complexes, creating an omnipresent monitoring network that can detect even the smallest disturbances. Canoptech Tomb Sentinels guard critical junctions and high-value collection areas, their massive frames and devastating weaponry serving as final barriers against serious threats. These constructs are programmed with specific protocols for protecting the collection, prioritizing the preservation of specimens over the destruction of intruders whenever possible. Their targeting systems can distinguish between different threat levels, applying appropriate levels of force to neutralize dangers while minimizing collateral damage to nearby exhibits. The phase gate network throughout the galleries serves dual purposes as both transportation system and security measure. Gates can be activated to provide rapid movement between distant sections of the complex, allowing Trazyn and his constructs to respond quickly to threats or collection opportunities. The same gates can be used defensively to redirect attacks, trap intruders in isolated sections, or evacuate valuable specimens to secure locations. Advanced gate configurations can create temporal loops that trap enemies in recursive spatial patterns, effectively removing them from the battlefield without permanent harm. Automated defense systems supplement the Canoptech security forces with a variety of technological countermeasures. Gauss flare arrays hidden within gallery walls can emerge to engage multiple targets simultaneously, their molecular disintegration beams calibrated to disable rather than destroy potential specimens. Tesla coil networks create electromagnetic barriers that can stun biological intruders while leaving mechanical systems unaffected. Particle whip emplacements provide area denial capabilities, creating energy barriers that prevent access to sensitive areas without causing permanent damage to the gallery structure. The integration of these various security systems creates overlapping fields of protection that adapt dynamically to changing threat conditions. Central coordination protocols analyze incoming threats and deploy appropriate countermeasures, escalating defensive responses only when necessary to preserve the collection. The system prioritizes containment over destruction, reflecting Trazyn's preference for adding successful intruders to his collection rather than simply eliminating them. This approach has resulted in several notable additions to the galleries, including Imperial Inquisitors and Chaos Space Marines, who attempted unauthorized access to Solemnace's treasures. Environmental control systems throughout the galleries maintain precise atmospheric conditions required for different types of specimens and artifacts. Advanced atmospheric processors can adjust oxygen levels, humidity, temperature, and even gravitational fields within specific zones to match the requirements of particular exhibits. These systems work in conjunction with the stasis crypts to ensure optimal preservation conditions, while also providing comfortable viewing environments for Trazyn during his frequent tour of the collection. The power requirements for maintaining such extensive gallery complexes necessitate sophisticated energy distribution networks that tap into Solemnace's primary power grid while maintaining independent backup systems. Fusion reactors adapted from captured Imperial technology supplement traditional Necron power sources, providing the massive energy requirements for temporal stasis fields and dimensional pocket maintenance. The distribution network includes multiple redundant pathways that ensure uninterrupted power supply even during combat operations or system maintenance periods. The most disturbing aspect of Trazyn's collection lies not in the ancient artifacts or technological relics that fill his galleries, but in the thousands of living beings suspended throughout Solemnace in states of perfect temporal stasis. These specimens, drawn from every corner of the galaxy and representing dozens of different species, exist in a nightmarish limbo where consciousness persists while the body remains completely immobilized. Unlike simple cryogenic preservation or death itself, Trazyn's temporal stasis fields maintain full neural activity while preventing any physical movement or aging, creating what amounts to an eternal prison of awareness for his unwilling subjects. The methodology behind these living dioramas represents decades of experimentation with temporal manipulation technology. Trazyn discovered early in his collecting career that standard preservation techniques failed to capture the dynamic essence of living subjects. Corpses, no matter how perfectly preserved, lacked the vitality that made historical figures truly significant. Simple stasis fields that completely suspended biological activity reduced his specimens to little more than elaborate statues. The breakthrough came when Necron technicians developed selective temporal fields that could slow different biological processes at varying rates, maintaining consciousness and basic neural function while preventing muscular movement and cellular aging. The process begins with careful subject selection and capture. Trazyn employs specialized deathmark assassins equipped with modified synaptic disintegrators that can render targets unconscious without causing permanent neurological damage. These weapons fire focused energy bursts that temporarily disrupt the nervous system, allowing for clean captures of even the most heavily augmented subjects. Space Marines present particular challenges due to their enhanced physiology and multiple redundant organs, requiring precisely calibrated energy settings to achieve unconsciousness without triggering their Laraman cells or other defensive biological responses. Once subjects reach Solemnace's processing chambers, Necron technicians conduct detailed biological scans to map neural pathways, cardiovascular systems, and metabolic processes. This information feeds into specialized cogitators that calculate the exact temporal field parameters required for each individual specimen. The calculations must account for species-specific physiology, augmentations, psychic abilities, and even psychological factors that might affect how consciousness persists under stasis conditions. A single miscalculation can result in either complete neural shutdown or, worse from Trazyn's perspective, permanent brain damage that ruins the specimen's historical value. The installation process involves surgically implanting microscopic temporal field generators directly into the subject's nervous system. These devices, no larger than human blood cells, distribute throughout the brain and spinal cord, where they create localized time distortion fields. The generators operate on quantum frequencies that selectively target different types of neural tissue, maintaining consciousness centers while suppressing motor functions. Advanced subjects receive additional implants in major organ systems to prevent biological processes from causing discomfort or distress during extended stasis periods. The psychological impact on subjects who retain full awareness while trapped in immobilized bodies proves devastating across all species studied. Imperial Guard veterans, accustomed to battlefield stress and harsh conditions, frequently experience complete psychological breakdowns within the first few months of stasis. Their military training provides no preparation for the absolute helplessness of temporal imprisonment, where even basic functions like blinking or swallowing become impossible. Many subjects attempt to maintain sanity through mental exercises, reciting prayers, battle hymns, or technical manuals, but the complete absence of sensory feedback eventually erodes even the strongest minds. Space Marines demonstrate greater psychological resilience due to their enhanced mental conditioning and hypno-indoctrination, but even these superhuman warriors succumb to the horror of eternal immobility. Their enhanced senses, normally advantageous in combat situations, become sources of torment as they remain acutely aware of their surroundings while unable to respond to any stimuli. Chapter traditions and battle brother bonds provide some psychological anchor points, with many Astartes mentally reciting the Codex Astartes or their chapter's founding principles to maintain identity coherence. Eldar subjects present unique challenges due to their psychic sensitivity and extended lifespans. Their heightened emotional responses and psychic abilities create feedback loops within the temporal fields that can cause severe mental trauma. Craftworld Eldar, with their rigid emotional control and path-based lifestyle, often retreat into catatonic states as their minds attempt to process the impossibility of their situation. Dark Eldar specimens display more varied responses, with some maintaining their sadistic personalities by fantasizing about revenge, while others descend into madness when deprived of the pain and sensation that defines their existence. Orc subjects provide perhaps the most disturbing examples of stasis-induced psychological deterioration. Their naturally aggressive and social nature makes solitary confinement particularly traumatic, despite their seemingly simple mental processes. Orcs derive identity and purpose from constant action and interaction with their clan mates, making the complete stillness of temporal stasis antithetical to their fundamental psychology. Many orc specimens develop repetitive thought patterns that eventually degrade into incoherent mental loops, their consciousness fragmenting under the strain of enforced inactivity. The most elaborate dioramas in Trazyn's collection recreate entire historical scenes using hundreds of living subjects arranged in perfect tableaus. The Battle of Cronus Plains occupies an entire gallery wing, featuring 2 complete Imperial Guard regiments frozen at the moment of their final charge against an Orc Wa. The Cadian 47th Shock Troops advance across a recreated battlefield, complete with authentic terrain features, their lasguns raised and battle cries frozen on their lips. Opposing them, over 300 orcs surge forward in a green tide of violence, their crude weapons gleaming under artificial sunlight that perfectly matches Cronus's star spectrum. The technical achievement of maintaining such complex multi-subject stasis fields requires enormous computational power and energy expenditure. Each individual temporal field must be precisely calibrated to interact harmoniously with neighboring fields, preventing interference patterns that could disrupt the overall tableau. The processing requirements increase exponentially with each additional subject, necessitating dedicated cogitator banks and specialized canoptech constructs to monitor field stability. Trazyn considers the resource expenditure worthwhile for the historical accuracy these dioramas provide, offering visitors a perfect glimpse into pivotal moments of galactic history. The Wa Scarjo diorama represents one of Trazyn's most ambitious preservation projects, capturing an entire orc warband at the peak of their power. The central gallery houses Warboss Scarjo himself, a massive orc whose cybernetic enhancements and elaborate war gear mark him as one of the most successful orc leaders of the 41st millennium. Surrounding him, over 400 orcs from various clans create a frozen explosion of green-skinned violence, their weapons raised in eternal tribute to their warboss. Gretchen's servants scurry between the larger orcs' feet, while Squiggoth war beasts tower over the entire scene. The preservation of the Wa required careful timing and extensive intelligence gathering to identify the optimal moment for capture. Trazyn's agents monitored Scarjo's campaigns for over 2 years, analyzing the warboss's tactical patterns and identifying the moment when his forces would achieve maximum cohesion and fighting strength. The actual capture operation involved coordinated strikes by multiple Necron forces, with immortal phalanxes providing distraction, while specialized capture teams deployed temporal stasis fields across the entire warband. The operation's success required split-second timing, as orc psychology makes them particularly susceptible to panic and dispersal when faced with incomprehensible threats. The Court of the Crimson King diorama preserves an entire Eldar diplomatic session from the Craftworld Ulthwé, captured during negotiations with representatives from 3 other Craftworlds. The scene depicts Farseer Eldred Ulthrin in deep consultation with his fellow seers, their elegant forms arranged around a Wraithbone Council chamber that Trazyn had specially reconstructed within his galleries. The Eldar's natural grace and poise make them ideal subjects for such displays, their frozen forms maintaining an ethereal beauty that complements the sophisticated technology of their preservation systems. The capture of such high-value Eldar targets required months of preparation and the deployment of Trazyn's most advanced infiltration assets. Eldar's psychic abilities make them particularly difficult to approach undetected, necessitating the use of specialized death marks equipped with side-dampening equipment. The operation succeeded only because Trazyn correctly predicted the location and timing of the diplomatic meeting through analysis of Eldar prophecy patterns and craftworld movement data gathered over several decades. The successful capture of Eldred Ulthrin represents one of Trazyn's greatest collection coups, though the Farseer's continued psychic awareness in stasis creates ongoing containment challenges. Imperial subjects in the collection range from common guardsmen to high-ranking officials and Space Marine commanders. The Hall of Imperial Glory Houses preserved examples of virtually every major Imperial organization, including commissars caught in the act of executing cowards, tech priests performing sacred rituals, and even several inquisitors frozen while conducting heretic interrogations. Each specimen represents hours of careful study and preparation, as Imperial subjects often possess augmentations, psychic abilities, or specialized equipment that complicates the preservation process. The preservation of Space Marine subjects presents unique technical challenges due to their enhanced physiology and power armor systems. The temporal fields must account for the complex interactions between Astartes' biology and their armor's life support systems, maintaining both the warrior and his equipment in perfect stasis. Multi-lung respiratory systems, osmodula bone density, and other organ enhancements require specialized field calibrations that differ significantly from baseline human parameters. Power armor presents additional complications, as its machine spirit must be carefully sedated to prevent it from attempting to assist its wearer during the stasis process. Chaos Space Marines in the collection demonstrate the horrifying effects of prolonged warp exposure combined with temporal stasis. Their mutations and demonic augmentations create unstable interactions with the temporal fields, requiring constant monitoring and adjustment to maintain containment. Several specimens show evidence of continued mutation even under stasis, their flesh slowly reshaping itself in response to chaos energies that seem to transcend normal temporal boundaries. These subjects require specialized containment protocols, including psychic dampening fields and consecrated silver barriers, to prevent warp contamination from spreading to other exhibits. The ethical implications of using sentient beings as living museum pieces would trouble any civilization possessed of moral sensibilities, but Trazyn demonstrates complete indifference to the suffering his collection methods inflict. His Necron psychology views organic life through the lens of scientific curiosity rather than empathetic concern, seeing his subjects as fascinating specimens rather than fellow sentient beings deserving of consideration. The concept of consent remains entirely foreign to his thought processes, as he considers the historical value of his preservation work to far outweigh any temporary discomfort experienced by his subjects. Trazyn's justifications for his collection methods reflect a fundamentally alien moral framework that prioritizes preservation over individual autonomy. He views the galaxy's constant warfare and destruction as wasteful, arguing that his preservation efforts serve a greater good by ensuring that significant historical figures and moments survive for future study. The suffering of individual subjects becomes irrelevant when weighed against the educational value their preservation provides for future generations. This utilitarian calculus allows him to rationalize even the most horrific aspects of his collection methods. The Overlord's complete emotional detachment from his subjects' suffering manifests in his treatment of the collection as purely academic specimens. He conducts regular tour of his galleries, examining preserved subjects with the same clinical interest a scholar might show toward ancient manuscripts or archaeological artifacts. The fact that his specimens remain conscious and aware of their surroundings fails to register as morally significant, existing merely as an interesting side effect of the preservation process rather than a source of ethical concern. The deeper galleries of Solemnace house specimens that transcend mere historical curiosity, containing figures whose capture required decades of planning and resources that would bankrupt entire Imperial sectors. These crown jewels of Trazyn's collection represent the pinnacle of his preservation artistry, each acquisition a masterpiece of timing, intelligence gathering, and technological precision. The stasis crypts containing these legendary figures occupy specially constructed chambers deep within the tomb world's core, where additional layers of security and environmental control ensure their perpetual preservation. Captain Lysander of the Imperial Fists stands frozen in his Terminator armor, captured during the Siege of Maladrax while leading a boarding action against a Chaos vessel. The massive Space Marine's Thunder Hammer remains raised above his head, eternally poised to deliver a crushing blow that will never fall. His Storm Shield bears fresh battle damage from the engagement, its adamantine surface scarred by demon claws and bolt impacts. The preservation field maintains even the smallest details of his equipment. Servo skulls still glow with activation runes. Purity seals flutter in an artificial breeze that exists only within his temporal bubble, and his armor's auto senses continue their eternal vigil through crimson lens displays. The capture of Lysander required infiltrating a full Imperial Fists strike force during active combat operations, a feat that demanded precise coordination between multiple Necron assets. Trazyn's death marks had monitored the captain's tactical patterns for months, identifying the exact moment when he would be isolated from his battle brothers during the boarding action. The temporal stasis field activated just as Lysander prepared to strike down a greater demon of Khorne, preserving him at the peak of his martial prowess. The remaining Imperial Fists found only empty power armor where their captain had stood, leading to decades of fruitless investigation by Imperial authorities. Warboss Grimskull occupies an entire gallery chamber, his massive form requiring specialized containment protocols due to his extensive cybernetic modifications. The Orc leader's mechanical claw still sparks with residual energy, while his shooter remains loaded with a full magazine of custom ammunition. His cybernetic eye glows with a baleful red light that continues to track movement outside his stasis field, creating an unsettling impression that the Warboss remains aware of his surroundings despite his temporal imprisonment. The preservation systems must constantly compensate for the unstable nature of Orc technology, as several of Grimskull's cybernetic implants continue attempting to function even under stasis. The Warboss's capture occurred during the height of his war against the Forge world Metalica, when his forces had breached the planetary defenses and begun looting the sacred manufactorums. Trazyn's forces struck during a massive battle between Grimskull's Knobs and a force of Skitarii defenders, using the chaos of combat to mask their approach. The Orcs' natural resistance to psychic effects complicated the stasis process, requiring multiple field generators working in concert to achieve complete temporal suspension. His warband's subsequent collapse without their leader's unifying presence provided Trazyn with additional specimens, including several knobs and a complete Stomp-A-War machine. Ethereal Onal Emyen represents one of Trazyn's most diplomatically sensitive acquisitions, captured during a crucial negotiation between the Tau Empire and a rebellious human colony. The Ethereal's ceremonial robes remain pristine within his stasis field, their fabric maintaining the subtle shimmer that marks them as products of advanced Tau textile engineering. His honor blade rests across his knees in a gesture of peaceful intent that will endure for eternity, while his aged features display the serene confidence that made him one of the most influential ethereals of his generation. The preservation field maintains even the complex pheromone signatures that ethereals use to influence other Tau, creating a complete biological snapshot of this crucial cast member. The operation to acquire Onal Emyen required infiltrating a heavily defended Tau diplomatic facility while avoiding detection by both Tau security forces and human colonial militias. Trazyn's agents spent months studying Tau protocols and behavioral patterns, identifying the precise moment when the ethereal would be most vulnerable to capture. The successful extraction occurred during a formal ceremony, with temporal stasis fields activating just as the ethereal raised his honor blade in ritual salute. The Tau Empire's subsequent investigation into his disappearance led to increased security protocols that have significantly complicated Trazyn's future acquisition attempts within Tau space. Among the most controversial specimens in Trazyn's collection are the rumored remains of Primarch genetic material, artifacts whose very existence would trigger galaxy-spanning conflicts if their presence became widely known. Deep within Solemnace's most secure vaults, sealed behind multiple layers of temporal barriers and dimensional locks, these specimens represent the ultimate prize for any student of Imperial history. The genetic samples allegedly derived from the original Primarch creation, laboratories on Terra, preserved through unknown means during the chaos of the Horus Heresy, and somehow acquired by Trazyn's agents during the 10 millennia since. The provenance of these samples remains shrouded in mystery, with even Trazyn's own records providing only fragmentary information about their acquisition. Imperial records from the Heresy era describe the systematic destruction of all Primarch genetic material following the Emperor's internment within the Golden Throne, yet persistent rumors suggest that certain samples survived in hidden laboratories or private collections. The samples within Trazyn's vaults show genetic markers consistent with multiple Primarch lineages, including some that correspond to the Lost Legions, whose histories were expunged from Imperial records. The preservation of Primarch genetic material presents unique technical challenges due to the psychically active nature of the specimens. Standard temporal stasis fields prove insufficient to contain the warp-touched energies inherent in Primarch biology, requiring specialized containment protocols that incorporate both technological and psychic dampening measures. The preservation chambers utilize a combination of temporal manipulation, psychic null fields, and exotic matter containment to maintain sample integrity while preventing the dangerous energies from affecting other collection areas. Even dormant, these genetic samples generate measurable psychic phenomena that require constant monitoring and adjustment of containment parameters. The implications of possessing such specimens extend far beyond their historical value, as Primarch genetic material could theoretically be used to create new Space Marine legions or even attempt Primarch cloning projects. Trazyn's motivations for acquiring these samples remain unclear, though his documented obsession with preserving significant historical artifacts suggests that their research potential interests him less than their status as irreplaceable relics of the Great Crusade era. The specimens exist purely as museum pieces within his collection, their immense strategic value subordinated to their historical significance. Artifacts from the Horus Heresy era occupy several specialized galleries within Solemnace, their preservation requiring careful environmental control to prevent degradation of materials exposed to the psychic trauma of that galaxy-spanning conflict. Fragments of the Vengeful Spirit's bridge contain scorch marks from the final confrontation between the Emperor and Horus, their molecular structure still bearing traces of the psychic energies unleashed during that climactic battle. Pieces of ceramite armor from various legions display battle damage that tells the story of brother fighting brother across 1,000 worlds, each scar and dent preserved with meticulous accuracy. The acquisition of these Heresy-era artifacts required extensive archaeological expeditions to battlefields across the galaxy, with Trazyn's forces conducting systematic excavations of sites where major engagements occurred. Many artifacts were recovered from the ruins of Istvan III and Istvan V, their preservation complicated by millennia of exposure to chaos energies that continue to influence their molecular structure. Others came from the siege of Terra itself, recovered from ruins that Imperial authorities had declared permanently off-limits due to their psychic contamination. Each artifact required individual assessment and specialized preservation protocols to ensure their long-term stability within the collection. The technological marvels within Trazyn's collection include fragments of standard template construct systems that predate the Age of Strife, their data cores containing manufacturing templates for technologies that the Imperium has spent 10 millennia trying to rediscover. These SDC fragments represent some of the most valuable artifacts in the galaxy, their potential to revolutionize Imperial manufacturing capabilities, making them priceless beyond measure. Trazyn's specimens include partial templates for advanced medical equipment, agricultural systems, and even fragmentary data relating to Dark Age of technology military hardware that surpasses current Imperial capabilities. The preservation of SDC fragments requires specialized containment protocols that protect their delicate data storage matrices while preventing unauthorized access to their contents. The fragments exist within sealed temporal bubbles that prevent data degradation while maintaining the quantum coherence necessary for information retrieval. Advanced security measures protect these specimens from both physical and digital intrusion attempts, with multiple layers of encryption and psychic barriers preventing unauthorized access to their contents. Trazyn views these artifacts purely as historical specimens rather than functional technology, their research potential subordinated to their value as relics of humanity's lost golden age. Eldar Wraithbone constructs throughout the collection demonstrate the sophisticated biotechnology that the dying race developed during their ancient empire's height. These living structures continue to grow and adapt within their temporal stasis fields, their psychically active material responding to stimuli that exist only within the preserved moments of their capture. Wraithbone Guardian constructs stand eternal vigil over phantom threats, their spirit stones glowing with the trapped souls of long-dead Eldar warriors. Avatar fragments contain traces of Khan's divine essence, their molten surfaces frozen at temperatures that would vaporize conventional materials. The acquisition of Wraithbone constructs required raids against multiple craftworlds and exodite settlements, operations that demanded precise timing to avoid the precognitive abilities of Eldar farseers. Many specimens were captured during the confusion of larger battles, when Eldar attention focused on immediate threats rather than subtle infiltration by Necron forces. The preservation process proved particularly challenging due to Wraithbone's psychically active nature, requiring specialized containment protocols that maintain the material's living properties while preventing it from responding to external psychic stimuli. Dark Age of technology archaeotech specimens represent the pinnacle of human scientific achievement, their advanced capabilities demonstrating the heights that humanity reached before the Age of Strife brought civilization crashing down. Quantum processors continue their calculations within temporal stasis, their computational matrices working on problems that may have been unsolvable for 15,000 years. Gravitic manipulators maintain localized distortions in space-time that exist as frozen ripples within their preservation fields. Molecular assemblers hold partially completed constructions in eternal suspension, their atomic-scale manufacturing processes halted at the moment of capture. These archaeotech specimens required acquisition from the most dangerous regions of the galaxy, including expeditions to space hulks, abandoned research stations, and worlds lost during the Age of Strife. Many artifacts were recovered from sites that Imperial authorities had declared too dangerous for exploration, their advanced technology creating hazards that conventional forces could not safely navigate. Trazyn's Necron physiology and advanced technology allowed his forces to operate in environments that would prove lethal to organic beings, recovering artifacts from radioactive ruins, temporal anomaly zones, and locations where reality itself had become unstable. The preservation of archaeotech requires constant monitoring due to the unpredictable nature of Dark Age technology, with many specimens continuing to operate at quantum levels even under temporal stasis. Advanced containment protocols prevent these artifacts from interacting with each other or with Solemnace's own systems, as their exotic operating principles could potentially cause catastrophic failures if allowed to interface with Necron technology. Each specimen exists within its own isolated preservation environment, their dangerous capabilities contained but not eliminated by the stasis process. Xeno specimens from extinct species provide unique insights into the galaxy's lost civilizations, their preservation offering glimpses into cultures that vanished millennia before humanity achieved spaceflight. UVAth constructs demonstrate the sophisticated biotechnology that this ancient race developed before their destruction during the Great Crusade, their organic architecture continuing to pulse with alien life even under temporal stasis. HRUD chronophage devices show evidence of temporal manipulation capabilities that rival Necron technology, their crystalline structures maintaining complex time distortions within their preservation fields. The acquisition of extinct species specimens required archaeological expeditions to dead worlds and forgotten star systems, with Trazyn's forces conducting systematic surveys of regions that galactic civilization had abandoned or forgotten. Many specimens were recovered from worlds that had been subjected to exterminatus orders, their alien nature preserved within the ruins of civilizations that the Imperium had deemed too dangerous to survive. Others came from natural disaster sites where entire species had been eliminated by stellar phenomena or ecological collapse, their remains preserved by chance within environments that prevented normal decay processes. The rarity of these extinct species specimens makes them among the most valuable items in Trazyn's collection, their scientific and historical significance far exceeding that of more common acquisitions. Each specimen represents irreplaceable knowledge about galactic evolution and the rise and fall of civilizations across cosmic time scales. Their preservation within Solemnace ensures that future scholars will have access to biological and technological data that would otherwise be lost forever, though Trazyn's refusal to share his collection means that this knowledge remains locked away from the galaxy's current inhabitants. The acquisition of legendary specimens requires patience measured not in years or decades, but in centuries. Trazyn's approach to collecting demonstrates a methodical precision that sets him apart from other Necron Overlords who favor direct conquest through overwhelming force. His operations begin with extensive intelligence gathering phases that can span multiple human generations, during which his agents monitor potential targets, study their behavioral patterns, and identify optimal capture opportunities. This patient methodology reflects both his immortal nature and his understanding that the most valuable specimens require careful timing to acquire without damage or degradation. The intelligence networks supporting Trazyn's collection efforts extend across multiple sectors and operate through diverse channels that exploit the galaxy's complex information systems. Modified servo skulls infiltrate Imperial installations, their cogitators reprogrammed to identify historically significant individuals and events while maintaining their original functions to avoid detection. These mechanical spies transmit data through corrupted astropathic channels, piggyback on routine Imperial communications, and utilize dead-drop protocols that leave information caches in seemingly abandoned locations for later retrieval by Necron agents. Canoptech constructs form the backbone of Trazyn's field intelligence operations, their advanced sensor arrays and adaptive programming allowing them to operate undetected in diverse environments. Canoptech wraiths phase through solid matter to conduct surveillance within heavily fortified locations, their dimensional shift capabilities making them nearly impossible to detect through conventional security measures. These constructs can remain dormant for decades within target locations, activating only when specific trigger conditions indicate potential acquisition opportunities. Their recordings provide detailed behavioral analyses of target subjects, including movement patterns, security protocols, and psychological profiles that inform capture planning. The monitoring of Space Marine chapters requires particularly sophisticated intelligence operations due to their enhanced security measures and paranoid vigilance against infiltration. Trazyn's agents exploit the Imperium's own bureaucratic complexity, inserting false data into administrative records that gradually redirect chapter movements toward predetermined locations. Forged deployment orders, manipulated supply requisitions, and corrupted astropathic communications create cascading effects that position target subjects in vulnerable situations without their knowledge. These operations require precise timing and extensive knowledge of Imperial military protocols to avoid detection by chapter command structures. Eldar targets present unique challenges due to their precognitive abilities and sophisticated understanding of temporal mechanics. Trazyn's agents must operate through probability shadows and quantum uncertainty fields that mask their activities from farseer divination attempts. The Overlord has developed specialized techniques for creating false futures within the skein of fate, generating phantom probability threads that mislead Eldar seers while concealing his true intentions. These deception operations require advanced understanding of both Necron technology and Eldar psychic principles, with preparation phases extending across centuries to establish convincing false patterns within the web of causality. Orc targets demand entirely different approaches due to their chaotic nature and resistance to conventional intelligence gathering. Trazyn's agents monitor WA movements through gravitational wave detection, tracking the massive fleet movements that herald major Orc campaigns. Specialized infiltration units disguised as scrap metal or abandoned technology insert themselves into Orc settlements, where they monitor clan politics and identify rising war bosses before their power reaches its peak. The unpredictable nature of Orc society makes long-term planning impossible, requiring rapid response capabilities and flexible tactical approaches that can adapt to changing circumstances within hours rather than years. The infiltration techniques employed during acquisition operations utilize the most advanced Necron technology available, combining dimensional phase shifting with temporal manipulation to achieve effects that appear supernatural even by the standards of the 41st millennium. Phase shift generators allow Necron operatives to exist partially outside normal space-time, rendering them invisible to most detection methods while maintaining the ability to interact with physical objects when necessary. These devices create localized distortions in reality that bend light around the user, while dampening sound waves and electromagnetic signatures that might reveal their presence. Temporal manipulation during infiltration operations extends beyond simple time dilation to include probability adjustment and causality modification. Necron agents can create temporal loops that repeat specific moments until optimal conditions develop, effectively allowing unlimited attempts at infiltration without alerting security systems to previous failures. Probability dampening fields reduce the likelihood of random events that might compromise operations, while causality anchors prevent temporal paradoxes from disrupting mission parameters. These techniques require enormous energy expenditure and precise coordination between multiple technological systems, limiting their use to the most critical acquisition attempts. Dimensional phase shifting technology allows operatives to bypass physical barriers by existing in parallel dimensional spaces that overlap with normal reality. This capability proves particularly valuable when infiltrating heavily fortified locations where conventional stealth methods would prove inadequate. Phase-shifted agents can walk through solid walls, ignore gravitational fields, and remain unaffected by most forms of energy-based security systems. The technology requires constant recalibration to maintain dimensional coherence, with specialized Canoptech constructs monitoring phase variance and adjusting field parameters to prevent operatives from becoming permanently displaced from normal space-time. The deployment of Deathmark assassins represents Trazyn's most direct approach to target acquisition, though even these operations require extensive preparation and coordination. Deathmarks assigned to collection duties receive specialized equipment modifications that prioritize capture over elimination, their hyperspace hunters upgraded with synaptic disruptors and temporal stasis projectors. These weapons can render targets unconscious without causing permanent neurological damage, while portable stasis generators allow immediate preservation of specimens in the field. The assassins themselves undergo additional programming that emphasizes precision and specimen preservation over their normal elimination protocols. Deathmark operations typically involve teams of 3 to 5 assassins working in coordination to isolate and capture high-value targets during moments of maximum vulnerability. The assassins establish overlapping fields of fire that ensure complete coverage of the target area while maintaining escape routes for rapid extraction. Specialized ammunition includes neural disruptor rounds that can penetrate even the heaviest power armor to deliver precisely calibrated energy bursts directly to the target's nervous system. Backup systems include temporal anchor devices that prevent targets from escaping through teleportation or other dimensional travel methods. The coordination between deathmarks and supporting Lichguard units creates multi-layered acquisition operations that can adapt to changing tactical situations. Lichguard serve as both heavy assault elements and specimen protection units, their warscythes and hyperphase swords capable of carving through enemy defenses, while their dispersion shields provide mobile cover for extraction operations. These elite warriors receive specialized training in specimen handling and preservation protocols, ensuring that captured targets receive appropriate care during transport to Solemnace. Their presence also provides psychological deterrent effects that discourage pursuit by enemy forces seeking to recover captured personnel. Lichguard units assigned to acquisition duties operate under modified tactical doctrines that prioritize stealth and precision over the overwhelming force typically associated with Necron military operations. Their equipment includes sound dampening systems, electromagnetic signature suppressors, and adaptive camouflage that allows them to blend with various environmental conditions. Modified resurrection protocols ensure that damaged Lichguard can be rapidly restored to operational status without compromising ongoing missions, while enhanced communication systems maintain coordination with Deathmark teams and orbital support elements. The use of Lichguard as acquisition agents requires careful selection of individuals whose personalities and tactical preferences align with collection operations rather than traditional combat roles. These warriors undergo additional programming that emphasizes patience, precision, and specimen preservation over the aggressive combat instincts that typically define Necron warrior psychology. Their modified behavioral parameters allow them to operate effectively in stealth roles while maintaining the loyalty and dedication that makes them suitable for protecting Trazyn's most valuable acquisitions during transport and initial processing. When direct acquisition proves impossible or undesirable, Trazyn employs sophisticated negotiation and bargaining tactics that exploit his vast knowledge of galactic politics and his extensive collection of rare artifacts. These diplomatic approaches require careful analysis of potential trading partners to identify items or services that might motivate cooperation with his acquisition goals. Imperial commanders might be offered archaeotech components in exchange for access to historically significant personnel, while Chaos Warbands could receive ancient weapons in return for preserving specific individuals during their campaigns. The negotiation process typically begins with indirect contact through intermediaries who can establish communication without revealing Trazyn's direct involvement. These intermediaries include rogue traders, mercenary companies, and even certain inquisitors who maintain pragmatic relationships with Xenos entities when such cooperation serves Imperial interests. Initial contact focuses on establishing mutual benefit arrangements that appear to serve both parties' interests while gradually steering negotiations toward Trazyn's actual acquisition goals. The Overlord's reputation for honoring agreements and delivering promised compensation helps maintain these relationships across multiple transactions. Trazyn's extensive collection provides him with unique bargaining assets that few other entities in the galaxy can match. Rare technological artifacts, extinct species specimens, and historical documents serve as currency in negotiations with various factions seeking specific items for their own purposes. Tech priests might trade access to Forge World facilities for SDC fragments, while Space Marine chapters could provide cooperation in exchange for gene seed samples from their founding legion. These transactions require careful evaluation to ensure that traded items provide adequate compensation for their loss, while not significantly diminishing the collection's overall value. The complexity of multi-party negotiations increases exponentially when acquisition targets involve multiple factions or politically sensitive subjects. Trazyn has successfully orchestrated elaborate schemes involving Imperial Guard regiments, Astartes chapters, and even inquisitorial forces, by creating situations where all parties benefit from his intervention while unknowingly facilitating his collection goals. These operations might involve providing intelligence about enemy movements, supplying rare resources during critical campaigns, or offering technological assistance that tips the balance in important conflicts. Long-term relationship management with various galactic factions requires Trazyn to maintain detailed psychological profiles of key individuals and organizations that might prove useful for future acquisition opportunities. His databases contain comprehensive analyses of Imperial commanders, Chaos warlords, Orc warbosses, and Eldar leaders, including their motivations, weaknesses, and potential leverage points that could be exploited during negotiations. This information gathering extends across centuries, with continuous updates that track changing political situations and emerging opportunities for mutually beneficial arrangements. The ethical considerations surrounding Trazyn's bargaining practices remain complex, as his negotiations often involve trading away items or information that could significantly impact galactic conflicts. Providing advanced weapons to Chaos forces might facilitate specific acquisition opportunities, while potentially contributing to Imperial defeats and civilian casualties. Similarly, sharing intelligence about Eldar movements with Imperial forces could lead to craftworld attacks that result in the deaths of thousands of innocent beings. Trazyn's utilitarian calculus weighs these consequences against the historical value of his acquisitions, typically concluding that preserving significant specimens justifies the collateral damage caused by his interventions. The documentation and analysis of successful acquisition operations provides valuable intelligence for future collection efforts, with detailed after-action reports identifying effective techniques and areas for improvement. These analyses cover every aspect of operations, from initial intelligence gathering through final specimen processing, creating comprehensive databases that inform tactical planning for similar future missions. Pattern recognition algorithms identify recurring themes and successful methodologies that can be adapted for different target types and operational environments. Failure analysis proves equally important for refining acquisition techniques, as unsuccessful operations provide insights into security vulnerabilities, tactical limitations, and technological requirements that need addressing. Trazyn maintains detailed records of failed acquisition attempts, including analysis of enemy countermeasures, equipment failures, and strategic miscalculations that contributed to operational failures. This information feeds into continuous improvement processes that enhance the effectiveness of future collection efforts, while reducing the risk of detection or compromise. The integration of acquisition operations with Trazyn's broader strategic goals requires careful coordination between collection activities and his other responsibilities as a Necron Overlord. Military campaigns, diplomatic initiatives, and research projects must be balanced against collection opportunities to ensure optimal resource allocation and maximum strategic benefit. This coordination involves complex scheduling algorithms that identify synergistic opportunities where multiple objectives can be achieved through coordinated operations. The galaxy's most persistent thorn in Trazyn's side manifests in the form of Orokin the Diviner, a fellow Necron cryptech whose obsession with temporal manipulation and prophetic accuracy creates an inevitable collision course with the Overlord's collecting activities. Their rivalry transcends simple professional disagreement, representing a fundamental philosophical divide that cuts to the heart of Necron consciousness and purpose. Where Trazyn focuses his immortal existence on preserving the past through meticulous collection and documentation, Orokin dedicates his considerable abilities to predicting and manipulating future events with mathematical precision. Orokin's mastery of chronothermancy allows him to perceive potential futures with startling accuracy, creating detailed probability matrices that map possible outcomes across centuries of galactic development. His temporal calculations frequently identify pivotal moments where Trazyn's collection activities will significantly impact historical trajectories, leading to direct confrontations between the two ancient beings. The diviner views these interventions as dangerous disruptions to the natural flow of causality, arguing that removing key historical figures from their proper temporal contexts creates unpredictable ripple effects that could destabilize entire sectors. The philosophical differences between the two Necrons extend beyond mere academic disagreement into fundamental questions about the nature of existence and purpose. Trazyn's preservation efforts represent an attempt to create permanence in a galaxy defined by constant change and destruction, establishing static monuments to significant moments that will endure regardless of future developments. Orkan counters this approach with his belief that understanding and shaping future events provides far greater value than cataloging past achievements, viewing Trazyn's collection as an elaborate form of necrophilia that celebrates death over life. Their conflicts typically manifest through elaborate schemes of interference and counter-interference, with each combatant attempting to outmaneuver the other through superior planning and technological application. Orkan uses his prophetic abilities to identify Trazyn's future acquisition targets, positioning himself to disrupt collection operations through carefully timed interventions. The diviner might manipulate astropathic communications to redirect Imperial forces toward Trazyn's operational areas, or arrange for Eldar strike forces to arrive at collection sites moments before Necron acquisition teams complete their missions. Trazyn responds to these interventions through his own sophisticated counterintelligence operations, deploying false information and probability shadows designed to mislead Orkan's divination attempts. The Overlord creates elaborate deception schemes involving multiple fake acquisition targets, forcing the diviner to spread his resources across numerous potential intervention points while concealing his true objectives within layers of misdirection. These operations require extensive coordination between Trazyn's intelligence networks and his military forces, with timing measured in microseconds to exploit brief windows of opportunity when Orkan's attention focuses elsewhere. The technological arms race between the two Necrons has produced innovations in temporal manipulation and probability mathematics that advance Necron science far beyond its original parameters. Orkan's development of quantum uncertainty generators creates localized zones where cause and effect relationships become fluid, preventing Trazyn's collection teams from establishing stable temporal stasis fields around their targets. Trazyn counters with probability anchor, devices that lock specific outcomes into place regardless of external manipulation attempts, creating fixed points in space-time that resist even the most sophisticated chronothermancy techniques. Their rivalry occasionally escalates into direct military confrontation when diplomatic solutions and technological countermeasures prove insufficient to resolve their differences. These battles demonstrate the full scope of both combatants' capabilities, with Orkan's mastery of temporal manipulation creating battlefield conditions that shift constantly through different time streams. The diviner can accelerate specific units to superhuman speeds while slowing enemy forces to near immobility, creating tactical advantages that conventional military doctrine cannot address effectively. Trazyn's response involves deploying specialized Lichguard units equipped with temporal stabilization equipment that maintains consistent time flow within localized areas. These elite warriors advance through Orkan's time distortion fields while maintaining normal combat effectiveness, their hyperphase swords and dispersion shields proving equally effective regardless of temporal manipulation effects. The Overlord's tactical approach emphasizes overwhelming force, concentrated at specific points, rather than attempting to match Orkan's temporal manipulation capabilities across the entire battlefield. The collateral damage from their conflicts extends far beyond the immediate participants, affecting entire star systems as temporal distortions and probability fluctuations cascade through local space-time. Imperial worlds caught between their schemes experience unexplained phenomena including time loops, causality inversions, and probability storms that defy rational explanation. Planetary populations find themselves reliving the same day repeatedly, aging backwards, or experiencing multiple contradictory versions of the same events simultaneously. These temporal anomalies create significant challenges for Imperial authorities attempting to maintain order and coherent record-keeping within affected systems. Administratum clerks struggle to file reports about events that occur in multiple contradictory versions, while Imperial Guard commanders find their tactical plans disrupted by battlefield conditions that change retroactively. The Ecclesiarchy declares many affected worlds to be suffering from demon incursions, launching purification campaigns that target symptoms rather than addressing the underlying temporal manipulation causing the disturbances. Beyond his ongoing feud with Orokin, Trazyn faces considerable opposition from other Necron nobles, who view his collecting activities as frivolous diversions from their species' rightful destiny of galactic reconquest. These critics argue that his preservation efforts represent a fundamental betrayal of Necron supremacy, elevating inferior organic species to positions of honor within his galleries that should be reserved for Necron achievements and artifacts. The debate reflects deeper philosophical divisions within Necron society about their proper role in the galaxy and their relationship with younger races. Overlord Zondrek of the Sodek dynasty represents one of the most vocal critics of Trazyn's methods, though his opposition stems from different motivations than those of his more conventional peers. Zondrek's damaged memory engrams cause him to perceive the current galaxy as still existing during the war in heaven, viewing human and Xenos forces as rebellious Necrontyr subjects rather than legitimate independent civilizations. From his perspective, Trazyn's preservation of these rebels constitutes treason against the Necron crown, requiring immediate correction through proper military intervention. The criticism from Zondrek proves particularly frustrating for Trazyn because it comes from a fellow noble whose tactical brilliance and strategic acumen command respect throughout the Necron hierarchy. Zondrek's military campaigns demonstrate consistent success against Imperial and Xenos forces, lending credibility to his arguments about proper Necron priorities and methods. His condemnation of Trazyn's collecting activities carries weight within dynastic councils, creating political pressure that the Overlord must address through careful diplomacy and strategic alliance building. Overlord Anraker, the Traveler, presents a different form of opposition based on his mission to awaken dormant tomb worlds and unite the Necron species under centralized leadership. Anraker views Trazyn's focus on collecting organic specimens as a dangerous distraction from the urgent work of Necron reunification, arguing that such activities waste resources that could be better spent on awakening sleeping dynasties and coordinating military campaigns against younger races. His criticism focuses on practical considerations rather than philosophical objections, emphasizing the strategic opportunity costs of Trazyn's preservation efforts. The Traveler's arguments gain traction among Necron nobles who share his vision of species reunification and coordinated expansion into Imperial space. These leaders point to Trazyn's extensive resources and advanced technology as assets that could significantly accelerate awakening operations across multiple sectors. They argue that his intelligence networks and military capabilities represent exactly the kind of strategic advantages that united Necron forces would need to challenge the Imperium's dominance effectively. Trazyn's response to these criticisms emphasizes the long-term strategic value of his collection activities, arguing that his preservation efforts serve Necron interests by maintaining detailed records of enemy capabilities, tactical doctrines, and technological developments. His galleries contain comprehensive intelligence about Imperial military organization, space marine combat techniques, and Xenos technological capabilities that could prove invaluable for future conquest campaigns. This utilitarian justification allows him to frame his collecting activities as elaborate intelligence gathering operations rather than mere academic pursuits. The political maneuvering required to maintain his position within the Necron hierarchy forces Trazyn to balance his collecting activities against the expectations and demands of his peers. He carefully selects public acquisition targets that demonstrate clear military or intelligence value, while pursuing his more esoteric collection goals through covert operations that avoid dynastic scrutiny. This dual approach allows him to maintain the appearance of conformity with orthodox Necron priorities, while continuing his preservation work without interference from political rivals. Imperial forces across multiple sectors have begun to recognize patterns in the mysterious disappearances and unexplained phenomena that mark Trazyn's collection activities. Inquisitorial investigations have identified common elements linking dozens of seemingly unrelated incidents, including the surgical precision of personnel extractions, the advanced technology signatures detected at incident sites, and the complete absence of conventional battle damage that would indicate standard Xenos raids. These patterns have led to the classification of Trazyn as a high-priority threat requiring dedicated counter-operations and specialized response protocols. The Ordo Xenos has assigned multiple Inquisitors to investigate what they term the Collector phenomenon, deploying significant resources to track and counter Trazyn's activities across their operational areas. These investigations face enormous challenges due to the sophisticated nature of Necron technology and the centuries-long time scales involved in Trazyn's planning processes. Imperial intelligence gathering methods prove inadequate for detecting Necron infiltration techniques, while conventional military responses fail to address the dimensional and temporal manipulation capabilities that Trazyn's forces employ during acquisition operations. Inquisitor Valeria Thessarian of the Ordo Xenos has emerged as one of Trazyn's most persistent Imperial adversaries, dedicating her considerable resources and expertise to understanding and countering his collection methods. Her investigations have identified several key patterns in Trazyn's activities, including his preference for acquiring subjects during moments of high historical significance and his tendency to target individuals who represent unique or irreplaceable examples of their type. Thessarian's analysis suggests that the Collector operates according to museum curation principles rather than military objectives, leading her to develop counter-strategies based on protecting historically significant personnel rather than conventional force deployment. The Inquisitor's efforts have achieved limited success through the implementation of specialized protection protocols for high-value Imperial personnel. These measures include temporal stabilization devices that prevent stasis field deployment, dimensional anchor systems that block phase shift infiltration, and psychic detection networks that can identify Necron presence through their null field signatures. While these countermeasures cannot completely prevent Trazyn's acquisition attempts, they have forced him to adapt his methods and occasionally abandon high-priority targets when security measures prove too sophisticated to overcome efficiently. Thessarian's investigation has also revealed the extent of Trazyn's intelligence networks within Imperial space, identifying several compromised communication nodes and infiltrated servo skull populations that provide him with advance warning about Imperial troop movements and strategic planning. The discovery of these penetration attempts has led to comprehensive security reviews across multiple sectors, resulting in improved counterintelligence protocols and enhanced screening procedures for mechanical devices operating within sensitive Imperial facilities. The Imperial response to Trazyn's activities extends beyond individual inquisitorial investigations to include coordinated military operations designed to locate and neutralize his operational bases. Battle Group Severus has conducted systematic sweeps of sectors where Collector activity shows high concentration, deploying advanced sensor arrays and specialized detection equipment capable of identifying Necron energy signatures. These operations face significant challenges due to the vast scale of galactic space and Trazyn's ability to operate from hidden bases that exist partially outside normal space-time. The military approach to countering Trazyn involves establishing rapid response forces equipped with specialized anti-Necron weaponry and trained in counter-infiltration techniques. These units include Tempestus Scions equipped with advanced detection gear, Space Marines strike forces with experience fighting Necron opponents, and even limited deployment of Grey Knights when psychic phenomena suggest dimensional manipulation activities. The coordination between these diverse forces requires sophisticated command and control systems that can respond to collector incidents within hours rather than the days or weeks typical of standard Imperial military responses. Eldar Farseers represent perhaps the most sophisticated opposition to Trazyn's collecting activities, their precognitive abilities allowing them to identify acquisition attempts before they occur and deploy countermeasures that exploit their superior understanding of temporal mechanics. The Eldar approach to opposing the Collector focuses on protecting pivotal historical moments from disruption rather than preventing specific acquisitions, recognizing that Trazyn's removal of key figures from their proper temporal contexts could create cascade effects that alter the course of galactic history in unpredictable ways. Farseer Eldred Ulthrin of Craftworld Ulthwé has personally intervened in several of Trazyn's major acquisition attempts, using his mastery of divination and temporal manipulation to create probability barriers that prevent successful specimen extraction. Eldred's interventions typically involve subtle manipulations of causality that ensure target subjects remain in locations where Trazyn's forces cannot reach them, without triggering larger conflicts that would draw unwanted attention from Imperial authorities or other Xenos factions. The Eldar understanding of the webway provides them with unique advantages in countering Trazyn's dimensional manipulation techniques, allowing their forces to appear at collection sites through routes that bypass normal space-time entirely. Striking Scorpion aspect warriors can emerge from webway gates positioned behind Necron lines, while Dark Reapers deploy from concealed positions that provide perfect fields of fire against Trazyn's extraction teams. These tactical advantages allow relatively small Eldar forces to disrupt much larger Necron operations through superior positioning and timing. The philosophical motivations driving Eldar opposition to Trazyn extend beyond simple territorial disputes to encompass their species' broader understanding of fate and destiny. Eldar Farseers view the galaxy's future through the lens of probability and potential, recognizing that certain individuals and events serve as crucial nexus points that determine the trajectory of entire civilizations. Trazyn's removal of these pivotal figures threatens to create temporal paradoxes and causality loops that could destabilize the fabric of reality itself, potentially triggering catastrophic consequences that extend far beyond the immediate effects of his collection activities. The complexity of Eldar opposition to Trazyn manifests through multi-layered strategies that operate across different temporal scales simultaneously. Short-term interventions focus on preventing specific acquisitions through direct military action or subtle manipulation of circumstances surrounding target subjects. Medium-term operations involve seeding false information into Trazyn's intelligence networks to misdirect his attention toward less significant targets while protecting truly crucial historical figures. Long-term strategies include manipulating the broader flow of galactic events to reduce the number of collection opportunities available to Trazyn while strengthening the defenses around historically significant individuals and locations. The ongoing nature of these conflicts creates a complex web of action and reaction that spans centuries, with each side adapting their methods in response to the other's evolving capabilities. Trazyn's development of probability shadow generators forces Eldar Farseers to employ increasingly sophisticated divination techniques, while Eldar temporal manipulation countermeasures drive innovation in Necron chronothermancy and dimensional science. This technological and tactical evolution ensures that the conflict between the Collector and his various adversaries continues to escalate in complexity and sophistication, creating an eternal game of strategy that plays out across the breadth of galactic space and time. The acquisition of the entire 15th Ventrilian Nobles Regiment during the Siege of Solemnace represents one of Trazyn's most audacious collection operations, requiring precise timing and technological coordination that pushed even Necron capabilities to their limits. The siege itself had raged for 18 months across the fortress world's primary continent, with the Ventrilian nobles serving as the spearhead of the Imperial counter-offensive against a massive Orc-Wa that had overrun 3 neighboring systems. The regiment's aristocratic officers and veteran troopers had distinguished themselves through months of brutal urban warfare, their disciplined formations and superior equipment gradually pushing the greenskin invaders back from the planet's critical infrastructure. Trazyn's interest in the Ventrilian nobles stemmed from their unique position as one of the few remaining regiments that maintained pre-unification Terra military traditions, their ceremonial uniforms and combat doctrines preserving elements of ancient Terran warfare that had survived the Emperor's conquest of humanity's birthworld. The regiment's officers carried weapons that dated back to the Age of Strife, their plasma pistols and power swords bearing maker's marks from forge complexes that had been destroyed millennia ago. Their battle standards displayed heraldry that predated the Imperial Aquila, making them living repositories of human military history that would be impossible to replace once lost to the grinding attrition of Imperial warfare. The extraction operation required Trazyn to coordinate the deployment of multiple Necron forces across a battlefield spanning hundreds of square kilometers, with timing measured in microseconds to ensure complete success. His intelligence networks had identified the exact moment when the Ventrilian nobles would advance through the ruins of Solemnace Prime's commercial district, their formation compressed into a relatively small area by the urban terrain. Canoptech spiders had spent weeks positioning specialized stasis field generators throughout the ruins, their constructs disguised as debris and wreckage to avoid detection by Imperial reconnaissance sweeps. The activation sequence began as Colonel Mordian Ventrilis raised his ancestral power sword to signal the final assault on the Orc stronghold. Temporal stasis fields erupted simultaneously across a 3-kilometer front, freezing over 4,000 Imperial guardsmen in perfect formation as they charged toward enemy positions. The energy requirements for maintaining such extensive stasis coverage forced Trazyn to tap directly into Solemnace's primary power grid, creating detectable gravitational distortions that Imperial sensors registered as localized space-time anomalies. The aftermath of the extraction left Orc defenders facing empty air where moments before they had confronted a regiment-strength assault. The Greenskins' simple minds struggled to process the sudden disappearance of their enemies, with many Orcs assuming the Hummies had turned invisible through some form of sneaky trickery. Imperial Command initially attributed the regiment's disappearance to a catastrophic teleportation accident, launching extensive search operations across multiple star systems, while never suspecting that their missing soldiers now stood in eternal formation within Trazyn's galleries. The preservation of the entire regiment required constructing specialized display chambers that could accommodate their massive formation while maintaining the precise environmental conditions necessary for long-term stasis. The Ventrilian nobles occupy a gallery complex spanning several square kilometers, their ranks arranged exactly as they appeared at the moment of capture. Colonel Ventrilis remains frozen with his sword raised high, his weathered features displaying the grim determination that made him one of the regiment's most decorated officers. Behind him, company commanders maintain their positions in the formation, their vox casters still transmitting final orders that will never reach their intended recipients. The theft of the clone lord Fabius Bile from under the noses of the Emperor's children required infiltrating one of the most paranoid and security-conscious chaos space marine warbands in the galaxy. Bile's reputation for brilliant genetic manipulation and his tendency to disappear for decades at a time made him an irresistible target for Trazyn's collection, representing one of the few individuals whose scientific knowledge rivaled that of the ancient Necron-tier biotransference masters. The Clone Lord's mobile laboratories contained genetic samples from dozens of species, including several that had been considered extinct for millennia, making his capture a potential windfall for Trazyn's xenobiological specimens. The operation's complexity stemmed from Bile's constant movement between different laboratory facilities, and his employment of multiple body doubles created through his own cloning techniques. Trazyn's agents spent over 2 years tracking the real Fabius Bile through his network of hidden research stations, analyzing genetic markers and behavioral patterns to distinguish him from his artificial duplicates. The Clone Lord's paranoia extended to employing different doubles for different types of meetings, with some clones programmed to believe they were the original Bile, while others served as obvious decoys designed to draw attention away from their creator's true activities. The breakthrough came when Trazyn's intelligence networks intercepted communications between Bile and a warband of Emperor's children led by Lord Commander Eidolon. The messages revealed plans for a joint operation to raid an Imperial research facility on the agri-world of Thessia Tertius, where Adeptus Mechanicus genetors had been conducting experiments with Xeno's DNA samples recovered from a space hulk. Bile's personal involvement in the raid indicated that the facility contained specimens of sufficient rarity to warrant his direct attention, providing Trazyn with the opportunity he needed to identify and capture the real Clone Lord. The extraction took place during the height of the Chaos assault on the research facility, with Emperor's children Noise Marines providing devastating covering fire, while Bile's surgical servitors systematically looted the Genetor laboratories. Trazyn's death marks had positioned themselves within the facility's lower levels, their hyperspace hunters modified with specialized neural disruptors designed to penetrate Bile's extensive cybernetic enhancements without causing permanent damage to his irreplaceable brain tissue. The assassins waited until Bile became isolated from his bodyguards while examining a particularly interesting genetic sample, then struck with coordinated precision that left the Clone Lord unconscious before his enhanced reflexes could respond. The substitution of a specially prepared duplicate prevented the Emperor's children from immediately discovering their allies' disappearance. Trazyn's technicians had spent months creating a perfect replica of Bile, using genetic samples obtained through previous encounters, programming the duplicate with enough of the original's knowledge and mannerisms to maintain the deception during casual interactions. The false Bile accompanied the Emperor's children back to their fleet, where it would eventually be discovered and destroyed, but not before providing Trazyn with several additional weeks to complete the real Clone Lord's processing and installation within his galleries. Bile's preservation presented unique challenges due to his extensive cybernetic modifications and the various chemical enhancements that permeated his biological systems. The Clone Lord's body contained dozens of implanted devices designed to monitor and regulate his enhanced physiology, while his bloodstream carried a cocktail of stimulants and genetic modifiers that continued to affect his cellular structure even under temporal stasis. Trazyn's technicians required multiple attempts to achieve stable stasis field parameters, with early efforts resulting in dangerous interactions between the temporal fields and Bile's cybernetic systems. The final solution involved creating a hybrid preservation system that combined temporal stasis with specialized containment fields designed to isolate Bile's various augmentations from each other. The Clone Lord now exists within multiple overlapping stasis bubbles, each one maintaining different aspects of his enhanced physiology in perfect suspension. His consciousness remains active within the primary temporal field, while secondary fields prevent his cybernetic implants from attempting to interface with Solemnace's systems. The preservation chamber includes monitoring equipment that tracks the complex interactions between his biological and mechanical components, ensuring that the delicate balance maintaining his existence remains stable across the centuries. The daring extraction of Castellan Creed during the fall of Cadia represents perhaps Trazyn's most politically significant acquisition, removing one of the Imperium's greatest tactical minds at the moment, when his leadership might have altered the course of the 13th Black Crusade. Creed's reputation as a master of defensive warfare and his intimate knowledge of Cadia's fortress systems made him an invaluable specimen for Trazyn's military history collection, while his disappearance at such a crucial moment created ripple effects that continue to influence Imperial military doctrine decades later. The extraction operation required Trazyn to deploy significant resources to Cadia during the planet's final hours, when Chaos forces under Abaddon the Despoiler had breached the planet's primary defense networks and begun their assault on the Fortress World's command centers. The Overlord's forces had to navigate through active battlefields where Space Marines, Imperial Guard, and Chaos Space Marines engaged in desperate close-quarters combat, while Demon engines and Titan war machines exchanged fire across the planet's scarred landscape. The operation's timing proved critical, as Trazyn needed to extract Creed before the planet's destruction, while avoiding detection by the numerous psychers and sorcerers whose abilities might have revealed his presence. Creed's location within the Kasser Kryn command bunker provided both opportunities and challenges for the extraction team. The fortress's massive ferrocrete walls and multiple defensive layers offered concealment for Trazyn's infiltration units, while the chaos of battle masked the energy signatures of their advanced equipment. However, the bunker's internal security systems included multiple redundant sensor arrays and automated defense turrets that could detect even phase-shifted intruders if their stealth systems experienced any malfunction. The presence of Commissar Yarrick and other high-ranking Imperial officers also created additional variables that had to be accounted for during the extraction planning. The actual capture occurred during a brief lull in the fighting when Creed had withdrawn to his private quarters to review tactical reports from across the planet's defense network. Trazyn's Lichguard materialized within the chamber using dimensional phase technology, their sudden appearance catching the Castellan completely off guard despite his legendary tactical awareness. Creed reached for his bolt pistol, but found his movement slowing as temporal stasis fields activated around him, his final expression showing not fear but professional interest in the advanced technology being employed against him. The substitution protocol involved replacing Creed with a sophisticated automaton designed to maintain the deception long enough for Trazyn's forces to complete their withdrawal from Cadia. The mechanical duplicate possessed enough of Creed's tactical knowledge and command presence to continue directing the planet's defense for several additional hours, issuing orders that maintained unit cohesion during the final stages of the battle. The automaton's eventual destruction during Cadia's collapse ensured that no evidence of the substitution survived, leaving Imperial historians to debate the circumstances surrounding Creed's final hours without ever suspecting the truth of his disappearance. The implications of Creed's removal extend far beyond the immediate tactical situation on Cadia, affecting Imperial military doctrine and defensive strategies across multiple sectors. His absence during the Fortress World's final hours prevented the implementation of several contingency plans that might have allowed more Imperial forces to escape the planet's destruction. The loss of his strategic insights also deprived the Imperium of one of its most experienced fortress warfare specialists, at a time when Chaos forces were launching coordinated assaults against multiple fortified worlds throughout the Cadian Gate region. Creed's preservation within Trazyn's collection required specialized containment protocols due to his extensive knowledge of Imperial military secrets and classified defense information. The Castellan's consciousness remains active within his stasis field, his tactical mind continuing to analyze battlefield scenarios and develop defensive strategies that will never be implemented. His preservation chamber includes psychic dampening fields designed to prevent his strategic knowledge from being accessed through unauthorized means, while monitoring systems track his mental activity to ensure that his remarkable tactical abilities remain intact despite his temporal imprisonment. The acquisition of Tau Fire Cast Commanders represents a different category of collection challenge, requiring Trazyn to overcome the sophisticated sensor networks and rapid response capabilities that characterize Tau military doctrine. The Fire Cast's emphasis on technological superiority and coordinated combined arms tactics creates defensive systems that can detect and respond to infiltration attempts with remarkable efficiency. Their battle suit's advanced sensor arrays and AI-assisted targeting systems can identify even phase-shifted intruders through quantum signature analysis, while their mobility allows them to reposition rapidly when threatened. Commander Farsight proved to be one of Trazyn's most elusive targets, his tactical brilliance and deep understanding of combined warfare making him nearly impossible to approach during active combat operations. The commander's custom battlesuit incorporated experimental technology that created localized interference fields around his position, disrupting the quantum coherence necessary for temporal stasis field deployment. His bodyguard of veteran crisis suit pilots maintained overlapping fields of fire that could eliminate threats from multiple directions simultaneously, while his tactical doctrine emphasized constant movement that prevented enemies from establishing fixed targeting solutions. The successful capture of Commander Brightsword during the Taros campaign required exploiting a brief window of vulnerability when his command cadre became separated from their supporting units during a tactical withdrawal. Trazyn's deathmarks had positioned themselves within the industrial ruins, where the Tau forces were conducting their fighting retreat, their weapons modified with pulse disruptor technology reverse, engineered from captured Tau equipment. The specialized ammunition could penetrate battlesuit armor while delivering precisely calibrated energy bursts that overwhelmed the suit's life support systems without causing permanent damage to the pilot. The extraction process involved capturing not only Commander Brightsword, but also his complete command cadre and their advanced battlesuits, creating a comprehensive display that demonstrates Tau military organization and technology at its peak effectiveness. The preservation of the battlesuits required specialized containment fields that maintain the delicate balance between their various technological systems, preventing power failures that might damage the suit's sensitive electronics, while ensuring that their AI systems remain dormant to avoid potential security breaches. Eldar Autarchs present the greatest challenge among Trazyn's Xenos acquisitions due to their psychic abilities and sophisticated understanding of probability and fate. These warrior leaders combine the tactical expertise of multiple aspect warrior paths with precognitive abilities that allow them to anticipate and counter most conventional attack strategies. Their Warp Spider aspect training provides them with personal teleportation capabilities that can instantly remove them from dangerous situations, while their Swooping Hawk experience grants them three-dimensional tactical awareness that makes ambush attempts extremely difficult to execute successfully. Autarch Melandriel of Craftworld Eandon required a multi-phase operation spanning several years to achieve successful capture. Trazyn's initial attempts failed when the Autarch's precognitive abilities allowed her to anticipate and avoid his extraction teams, her foresight providing sufficient warning to implement evasive maneuvers that frustrated even the most sophisticated Necron hunting protocols. The breakthrough came when Trazyn realized that her divination abilities focused primarily on immediate tactical threats rather than long-term strategic planning, creating opportunities for patient approaches that developed over extended time periods. The successful extraction occurred during a joint Eldar operation against a Tyranid splinter fleet, when Melandriel's attention focused entirely on coordinating her forces against the immediate Xenos threat. Trazyn's agents had spent months positioning specialized probability dampening fields throughout the battle zone, creating areas where the Autarch's precognitive abilities would be significantly reduced. The capture team struck during a moment when Melandriel was coordinating artillery strikes against Tyranid bioships, her consciousness focused on managing multiple tactical variables simultaneously rather than monitoring for potential threats to her personal safety. The preservation of Eldar Autarchs requires the most sophisticated containment protocols in Trazyn's collection due to their psychic sensitivity and the risk of their souls being consumed by Solemnace upon death. The stasis fields maintaining these specimens include specialized psychic barriers that prevent their souls from being detected by chaos entities while maintaining the neural activity necessary for consciousness preservation. The technical challenges involved in balancing these competing requirements have pushed Necron preservation technology to new levels of sophistication, creating hybrid systems that combine temporal manipulation with psychic science in ways that would have been impossible during the War in Heaven. The acquisition of these legendary specimens has established Trazyn's reputation as the galaxy's most accomplished collector. His galleries containing examples of military excellence and historical significance that cannot be found anywhere else in the known universe. Each successful extraction demonstrates the evolution of his techniques and the increasing sophistication of his technological capabilities, while the growing complexity of his targets reflects his ambition to preserve the most significant figures and moments in galactic history for future study and analysis. The pragmatic nature of Trazyn's collecting activities occasionally requires him to form temporary alliances with the very forces he typically views as specimens for his galleries. These partnerships emerge from calculated assessments of mutual benefit rather than any genuine ideological alignment, with the Overlord demonstrating remarkable flexibility in his willingness to cooperate with Imperial forces when such arrangements serve his preservation goals. The complexity of these relationships reflects Trazyn's unique position within the galaxy's power structure, where his vast knowledge and technological capabilities make him a valuable ally despite his fundamentally alien nature and disturbing collection practices. Imperial commanders who find themselves working alongside Trazyn discover an entity whose tactical acumen and strategic resources can prove invaluable during critical operations, even as they remain acutely aware of the risks inherent in trusting a being who views them as potential museum pieces. The Overlord's approach to these partnerships demonstrates sophisticated understanding of human psychology and Imperial military doctrine, allowing him to position himself as an indispensable ally while carefully concealing his true motivations and long-term objectives. His ability to provide crucial intelligence, advanced technology, and military support create situations where Imperial forces find cooperation more beneficial than conflict, despite their natural revulsion towards Xeno's entities. The most significant of these relationships has developed with Archmago's Dominus Belisarius Call, whose own obsession with technological preservation and archaeological recovery creates natural synergies with Trazyn's collection activities. Their initial contact occurred during the Call's expedition to the Pharos device on Satha, where both entities recognized their shared interest in preserving advanced technology from the galaxy's various lost civilizations. Call's willingness to work with Xeno's entities, when such cooperation serves the greater good of technological advancement, provided the foundation for a relationship that has endured across several centuries of intermittent collaboration. The partnership between Trazyn and Call operates through carefully structured exchanges of information and resources that benefit both parties while maintaining plausible deniability for the Archmagos' continued cooperation with Imperial authorities. Call provides Trazyn with detailed intelligence about newly discovered archaeotech sites and planned Imperial excavation operations, allowing the Overlord to position his forces for optimal specimen acquisition opportunities. In return, Trazyn shares selected technological insights and occasionally provides access to specific artifacts within his collection that could advance Call's own research projects into Dark Age of technology systems and xenotech applications. Their collaboration during the recovery of the Cadian pylons demonstrated the potential effectiveness of their partnership when both entities focused their considerable resources on shared objectives. Call's understanding of Imperial bureaucracy and military logistics complemented Trazyn's advanced sensor technology and dimensional manipulation capabilities, allowing them to conduct archaeological operations within active war zones while avoiding detection by Imperial authorities who might object to such cooperation. The successful preservation of several intact pylon control systems provided both parties with invaluable research materials, while ensuring that crucial xenotech remained available for future study rather than being destroyed by Imperial purification protocols. The relationship requires constant management due to the fundamental differences in their ultimate objectives and the political sensitivities surrounding Call's cooperation with Xeno's entities. The Archmagos must carefully balance his collaboration with Trazyn against the expectations of his peers within the Adeptus Mechanicus and the broader Imperial hierarchy, maintaining the appearance of orthodox behavior while pursuing research avenues that many would consider heretical. Trazyn, meanwhile, must resist his natural inclination to add such a remarkable specimen to his collection, recognizing that Call's continued freedom provides far greater long-term benefits than his preservation within the galleries of Solemnace. The practical aspects of their cooperation involve sophisticated communication protocols that allow secure information exchange without creating evidence that could compromise either party. Call utilizes modified servo skulls equipped with quantum encryption devices to transmit data to predetermined locations where Trazyn's agents can retrieve it without direct contact. The Overlord responds through carefully placed archaeological discoveries that provide Call with access to specific technologies or information, while maintaining the appearance of fortunate coincidence rather than deliberate cooperation. Their shared interest in standard template construct fragments has produced several joint operations, where both entities pool their resources to acquire and study these invaluable relics of humanity's golden age. Call's expertise in Imperial technology and manufacturing processes combines with Trazyn's advanced preservation techniques to ensure that recovered STC data remains intact and accessible for analysis. These collaborations require careful coordination to avoid triggering Imperial security responses that might compromise their operations, with both parties maintaining extensive cover stories and false documentation to explain their presence at sensitive archaeological sites. The theological implications of their partnership create additional complications for Call, whose cooperation with Xeno's entities contradicts fundamental Mechanicus doctrine regarding the purity of knowledge and the sanctity of human technology. The Archmagos justifies his actions through complex theological arguments that frame Trazyn as a repository of sacred knowledge rather than a Xeno's threat, arguing that the preservation of archaeotech serves the Omnissiah's greater purpose regardless of the entity responsible for its protection. These rationalizations allow Call to maintain his position within the Mechanicus hierarchy while continuing his collaboration with one of the galaxy's most accomplished preservationists. The intelligence sharing between Trazyn and Call extends beyond simple archaeological information to include broader strategic assessments of threats to historically significant sites and artifacts. Call's access to Imperial military communications and strategic planning documents provides Trazyn with advance warning of potential threats to his collection sites, while the Overlord's extensive sensor networks and intelligence gathering capabilities offer Call insights into Xeno's activities that might affect his own research projects. This mutual intelligence support has prevented the loss of several important archaeological sites to Imperial purification operations, or Xeno's raids. Space Marine chapters present more complex challenges for temporary alliance arrangements due to their enhanced suspicion of Xeno's entities and their rigid adherence to Imperial doctrine regarding alien threats. However, Trazyn has successfully negotiated limited cooperation agreements with several chapters when their interests align with his preservation goals, particularly in situations involving threats to historically significant battlefields or archaeological sites. These partnerships require careful management of Space Marine psychology and tactical doctrine, with Trazyn positioning himself as a useful tool rather than an equal partner in their joint operations. The Iron Hands chapter has proven most amenable to temporary cooperation due to their pragmatic approach to warfare and their appreciation for advanced technology. Their willingness to employ any effective tool against the enemies of humanity creates opportunities for Trazyn to provide tactical support during operations that threaten historically significant sites. The chapter's extensive cybernetic modifications also make them more comfortable working alongside obviously artificial entities, reducing the psychological barriers that complicate cooperation with more orthodox Astartes forces. Commander Carden Stronos of the Iron Hands 10th Company has participated in several joint operations with Trazyn's forces during campaigns against Orc-Waz that threatened to overrun ancient battlefield sites containing irreplaceable historical artifacts. The Space Marine's tactical expertise and the chapter's advanced weaponry complement Trazyn's sophisticated intelligence gathering and dimensional manipulation capabilities, creating combined arms operations that achieve objectives impossible for either force operating independently. Stronos's pragmatic acceptance of Xeno's cooperation when it serves Imperial interests provides a model that Trazyn has attempted to replicate with other chapter commanders. The Salamander's chapter's dedication to protecting civilian populations creates different opportunities for cooperation when Trazyn's preservation interests align with their humanitarian objectives. The chapter's emphasis on defensive warfare and their willingness to accept heavy casualties to protect innocent lives resonates with Trazyn's own commitment to preserving significant historical figures and cultural artifacts. Their joint operations typically involve defending population centers or cultural sites against Xeno's raiders or chaos incursions, with Trazyn providing advanced defensive technologies, while the Salamanders contribute their expertise in urban warfare and civilian protection protocols. Captain Pelaz Mirzan of the Salamander's 4th Company has worked alongside Trazyn's forces during the defense of the Shrine World Ophelia 7, where Chaos Raiders threatened to destroy ancient Imperial monuments and religious artifacts dating back to the Great Crusade era. The combined operation successfully preserved several irreplaceable historical sites while evacuating civilian populations to safety, demonstrating the potential effectiveness of carefully managed cooperation between Space Marine forces and Trazyn's collection operations. The captain's personal commitment to protecting Imperial cultural heritage provided common ground that overcame his natural suspicion of Xeno's entities. The Blood Ravens chapter's obsession with recovering lost knowledge and ancient artifacts creates natural synergies with Trazyn's preservation activities, though their tendency to appropriate discovered relics for their own use sometimes conflicts with his collection goals. The chapter's extensive libraries and research facilities make them valuable partners for analyzing recovered archaeotech and historical documents, while their expertise in operating within politically sensitive environments helps manage the diplomatic complications that arise from cooperation with Xeno's entities. Their joint operations typically focus on recovering knowledge rather than preserving specific individuals, reducing the ethical conflicts that might arise from more typical collection activities. Chief Librarian Isidora Kios has collaborated with Trazyn during several archaeological expeditions to space hulk sites where ancient Imperial vessels contain irreplaceable historical records and technological artifacts. The librarian's psychic abilities complement Trazyn's advanced sensor technology in detecting and analyzing archaeotech sites, while the chapter's expertise in space hulk operations provides tactical capabilities that even advanced Necron technology cannot fully replicate. These partnerships require careful management of the Blood Raven's tendency to claim discovered artifacts for their own use, with Trazyn often accepting partial access to recovered materials in exchange for the chapter's cooperation and expertise. The delicate balance between cooperation and collection creates ongoing tension in all of Trazyn's alliance relationships, as his partners remain acutely aware that their usefulness as allies may not prevent their eventual acquisition as specimens. This awareness influences their behavior during joint operations, with Imperial commanders maintaining heightened security protocols and escape plans that account for the possibility of betrayal by their Xeno's ally. The psychological stress of working alongside an entity who views them as potential museum pieces affects unit morale and tactical decision-making, requiring careful management to maintain operational effectiveness. Trazyn's approach to managing these relationships demonstrates sophisticated understanding of his partner's psychology and motivations, allowing him to maintain their cooperation while gradually positioning himself for potential future acquisitions. His behavior during joint operations emphasizes his value as an ally while subtly gathering intelligence about his partner's capabilities, weaknesses, and behavioral patterns that could prove useful if circumstances require their capture. The Overlord maintains detailed psychological profiles of all his alliance partners, tracking their tactical preferences, personal relationships, and potential vulnerabilities that might be exploited during future collection operations. The technological exchanges that occur during these partnerships provide Trazyn with valuable insights into current Imperial and Space Marine capabilities, while offering his allies access to advanced Necron systems that can significantly enhance their operational effectiveness. These exchanges require careful management to prevent his partners from gaining too much understanding of Necron technology, while ensuring that provided assistance remains sufficient to maintain their cooperation. Trazyn typically provides limited access to specific technological applications rather than comprehensive system knowledge, maintaining his technological advantages while demonstrating his value as an ally. The intelligence gathered through these partnerships significantly enhances Trazyn's understanding of Imperial military doctrine, Space Marine tactics, and Adeptus Mechanicus research priorities, providing crucial information for planning future collection operations. His allies' trust in his cooperation allows him to observe their decision-making processes, command structures, and operational procedures from privileged positions that would be impossible to achieve through conventional intelligence gathering methods. This access to insider information has proven invaluable for identifying potential acquisition targets and developing strategies for approaching them without triggering defensive responses. The long-term implications of these alliance relationships extend beyond their immediate tactical benefits to influence Trazyn's broader strategic planning and collection priorities. His growing understanding of Imperial culture and military psychology informs his approach to future acquisitions, while his demonstrated ability to work cooperatively with human forces creates opportunities for more sophisticated collection operations that exploit trust rather than relying purely on technological superiority. The relationships also provide him with potential leverage in negotiations with Imperial authorities, as his partner's dependence on his assistance creates political complications that might prevent aggressive responses to his collection activities. The relationship between temporary alliances and Trazyn's ultimate collecting goals creates a complex philosophical framework that reveals the fundamental contradictions at the heart of his existence. While he demonstrates remarkable pragmatism in working alongside the very beings he considers potential specimens, these partnerships expose deeper questions about his true motivations and the nature of his preservation obsession. The Overlord views himself as the galaxy's ultimate historian, a role that transcends simple academic interest to become a sacred duty that justifies any action necessary to preserve significant moments and figures from the relentless entropy of galactic warfare. Trazyn's belief in his historical mission stems from his unique perspective as one of the few beings in the galaxy capable of maintaining perfect memory across geological timescales. Unlike organic historians whose lifespans limit their ability to witness and record long-term historical patterns, his Necron physiology allows him to observe the rise and fall of entire civilizations with the detached objectivity of an immortal observer. This temporal advantage creates what he perceives as both an opportunity and an obligation to serve as the galaxy's permanent archivist, ensuring that crucial knowledge and specimens survive regardless of the political upheavals and military conflicts that consume shorter-lived species. The Overlord's conception of historical preservation extends far beyond simple record, keeping to encompass the physical preservation of living beings, artifacts, and even entire environments that represent significant moments in galactic development. His galleries contain not merely static displays, but dynamic tableaux that capture the essence of historical moments in ways that traditional documentation cannot achieve. A preserved Space Marine captain provides insights into Astartes' psychology, tactical doctrine, and genetic enhancement that no written record could convey with equal accuracy. An intact orc warboss offers direct access to greenskin social dynamics and military organization that remains impossible to study through conventional archaeological methods. This philosophy of active preservation creates an inevitable conflict between Trazyn's role as historian and his impact on the events he seeks to document. Each acquisition removes a potentially significant figure from their historical context, creating ripple effects that alter the very timeline he claims to preserve. The removal of Castellan Creed during the fall of Cadia demonstrates this paradox clearly, as his absence changed the course of the battle in ways that continue to influence Imperial military doctrine decades later. Trazyn's preservation efforts become acts of historical vandalism that destroy the context they seek to document, even as they ensure the physical survival of individual specimens. The Overlord's response to this philosophical contradiction reveals the alien nature of his thought processes and his fundamental disconnection from organic concepts of ethics and causality. He views historical events as discrete phenomena that can be preserved independently of their broader contexts, treating individual figures and moments as specimens that retain their significance regardless of their removal from the timeline. This reductionist approach allows him to rationalize his collection activities as pure preservation, while ignoring their destructive impact on the historical processes he claims to value. His treatment of living beings as historical artifacts rather than sentient creatures with inherent rights represents perhaps the most disturbing aspect of his preservation philosophy. Trazyn demonstrates complete indifference to the suffering his collection methods inflict, viewing the psychological trauma experienced by his specimens as irrelevant side effects that pale in comparison to their historical value. The consciousness preserved within his stasis fields becomes merely another data point to be maintained, rather than evidence of ongoing torture that would horrify any civilization possessed of moral sensibilities. The Overlord's justifications for this treatment reveal a utilitarian calculus that prioritizes collective benefit over individual autonomy, though his definition of collective benefit remains entirely self-determined. He argues that the preservation of historically significant individuals serves the greater good of galactic knowledge, ensuring that future scholars will have access to primary sources that would otherwise be lost to warfare and time. This reasoning transforms his collection activities into acts of public service that benefit all sentient species, regardless of their unwillingness to participate in his preservation efforts. The alien nature of Necron psychology becomes evident in Trazyn's complete inability to comprehend organic concepts of consent and personal autonomy. His thought processes operate according to logical frameworks that treat sentient beings as complex biological machines whose historical significance outweighs any preferences they might express about their own fate. The concept that individuals possess inherent rights that supersede their utility as historical specimens remains entirely foreign to his mental architecture, creating a moral blindness that allows him to commit atrocities while genuinely believing he serves a noble purpose. This philosophical framework creates particular tensions when applied to his temporary alliance relationships, where Trazyn must balance his preservation instincts against the practical benefits of continued cooperation. His partners represent some of the most historically significant figures he has encountered, their tactical brilliance and cultural importance making them irresistible targets for his collection efforts. However, their continued freedom provides ongoing access to intelligence, resources, and capabilities that prove more valuable than their static preservation within his galleries. This calculation forces him to suppress his collecting instincts in favor of long-term strategic planning, though the temptation to acquire such remarkable specimens creates constant internal tension. The contradiction between preservation and destruction becomes most apparent when examining Trazyn's role within the broader Necron species and their galaxy-spanning genocide campaign. His collecting activities exist within the context of a civilization dedicated to eliminating all organic life in the galaxy, viewing younger races as temporary infestations that must be eradicated to restore Necron dominance. The Silent King's great work envisions a galaxy cleansed of biological contamination, where Necron dynasties rule over sterile worlds populated only by their own immortal legions and mechanical servants. Trazyn's preservation of organic specimens directly contradicts this ultimate objective, creating a philosophical schism that separates him from his own species' fundamental purpose. His galleries celebrate the diversity and achievement of the very beings his fellow Necrons seek to destroy, preserving examples of human ingenuity, Eldar artistry, and Orc vitality that demonstrate the richness of organic civilization. This contradiction forces him to operate in ideological isolation from his peers, pursuing goals that many would consider treasonous to Necron supremacy, while maintaining the political alliances necessary to continue his collection activities. The Overlord's attempts to reconcile these competing philosophies reveal the depth of his psychological transformation during the Great Sleep, and the extent to which his consciousness has diverged from orthodox Necron thinking. He argues that his preservation efforts serve Necron interests by maintaining detailed records of enemy capabilities and cultural patterns that will prove valuable for future conquest campaigns. This utilitarian justification allows him to frame his collecting activities as elaborate intelligence-gathering operations rather than celebrations of organic achievement, though the distinction remains largely semantic rather than substantive. His collection methods demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of the cultures he studies, revealing an appreciation for organic achievement that extends far beyond simple academic interest. The care with which he preserves not only individual specimens, but also their cultural contexts suggests genuine respect for the civilizations he documents, even as he participates in their systematic destruction through his broader role within Necron society. This appreciation creates additional psychological tension as he observes the gradual elimination of the very cultures he has devoted millennia to studying and preserving. The obsessive nature of Trazyn's collecting activities has become both his greatest strength and most exploitable weakness, creating patterns of behavior that sophisticated enemies can predict and potentially manipulate. His reputation as the galaxy's premier collector makes him a target for those seeking to exploit his predictable responses to historically significant events and figures. Orican the Diviner has successfully disrupted multiple collection operations by anticipating Trazyn's interests and positioning countermeasures at likely acquisition sites, while Imperial forces have begun using historically significant personnel as bait to draw him into prepared ambush positions. The psychological compulsion driving his preservation efforts operates according to patterns that remain consistent across centuries of collection activities, making his behavior predictable despite his considerable intelligence and tactical flexibility. His inability to resist acquiring truly exceptional specimens creates vulnerabilities that enemies can exploit through careful manipulation of circumstances surrounding potential targets. The presentation of irresistible collection opportunities can override his normally cautious operational planning, leading him to take risks that more rational analysis would reject as unacceptable. This compulsive aspect of his personality reflects deeper psychological damage caused by the biotransference process and the extended period of the Great Sleep, creating obsessive behavioral patterns that provide structure and meaning to his immortal existence. The collecting activities serve as a form of psychological anchor that prevents the complete dissolution of identity that affects many awakened Necrons, though they also create dependencies that limit his tactical flexibility and strategic options. His need to acquire significant specimens becomes a driving force that shapes his decision-making processes and influences his broader strategic planning in ways that more balanced individuals might consider irrational. The relationship between obsession and identity becomes particularly evident when examining how Trazyn's collecting activities define his role within both Necron society and the broader galactic community. His reputation as the Infinite Collector provides him with a unique identity that distinguishes him from other Necron Overlords while creating expectations and behavioral patterns that constrain his actions. The maintenance of this identity requires continued collecting activities that demonstrate his expertise and dedication to preservation, creating a feedback loop that reinforces his obsessive behaviors while making them increasingly central to his sense of self. The practical implications of this psychological dependency extend beyond personal identity issues to affect his strategic planning and resource allocation decisions. The need to maintain and expand his collection influences his military deployments, diplomatic initiatives, and technological development priorities in ways that might not serve broader Necron interests or even his own long-term survival. Resources that could be devoted to strengthening Solemnace's defenses or expanding his territorial holdings instead go toward collection operations that provide prestige and psychological satisfaction, but limited strategic value. The vulnerability created by his predictable obsessions becomes most apparent during confrontations with enemies who understand his psychological profile and can exploit his compulsive behaviors. The presentation of false acquisition opportunities can draw his forces away from more important objectives, while threats to his existing collection can force him to commit resources to defensive operations that leave other interests unprotected. These manipulations succeed because they target the emotional and psychological foundations of his identity rather than purely rational strategic calculations, exploiting weaknesses that exist outside the normal parameters of military planning and tactical analysis. The long-term sustainability of Trazyn's preservation philosophy faces challenges from both external threats and internal contradictions that may eventually force fundamental changes in his approach to collection activities. The galaxy's increasing militarization and the growing sophistication of counter-Necron tactics reduce the number of viable acquisition opportunities while increasing the resources required for successful operations. Simultaneously, the expanding scope of his collection creates logistical and security challenges that strain even his considerable technological capabilities and resource base. The preservation requirements for his existing specimens demand constant attention and resource allocation that limits his ability to pursue new acquisitions, creating opportunity costs that may eventually force difficult choices about collection priorities and preservation standards. The maintenance of thousands of individual stasis fields requires enormous energy expenditure and technological oversight that diverts resources from other activities, while the security requirements for protecting such valuable specimens create defensive obligations that limit his operational flexibility and strategic mobility. The most galling failure in Trazyn's millennia-spanning collection career remains his inability to capture Abaddon the Despoiler during the 13th Black Crusade, despite having positioned himself perfectly to acquire the Warmaster of Chaos at the moment of his greatest triumph. The Overlord had spent decades analyzing Abaddon's tactical patterns and psychological profile, identifying the precise moment when the Chaos Lord would be most vulnerable to capture, the brief period following Cadia's destruction when even the Despoiler would be momentarily overwhelmed by the magnitude of his achievement. Trazyn's forces had infiltrated the bridge of the Vengeful Spirit itself, their phase shift generators allowing them to bypass the vessel's extensive defensive systems and demon-touched wards. The extraction attempt failed not due to technological limitations or tactical miscalculation, but because of Abaddon's own paranoid nature and the protective influence of the Chaos Gods themselves. The Warmaster's centuries of experience with assassination attempts had honed his instincts to supernatural levels, allowing him to detect the subtle dimensional distortions created by Necron phase shift technology, even while celebrating his victory over the Fortress world. His immediate response involved activating a demon weapon whose warp-touched energies created violent interference with Trazyn's stasis field generators, preventing the temporal locks from achieving stable containment around their target. The intervention of Bellacker, the first demon prince, proved decisive in thwarting the acquisition attempt. The ancient demon's mastery of shadow and illusion created false probability threads that confused Trazyn's tactical calculations, while his intimate knowledge of chaos technology allowed him to identify and counter the Necron infiltration before it could reach completion. Bellacker's personal interest in protecting Abaddon stemmed from his own schemes for manipulating the War Master, making the Demon Prince a formidable opponent whose motivations aligned perfectly with preventing Trazyn's success. The failed capture of Abaddon created cascading effects that continue to frustrate Trazyn's collection efforts within chaos-controlled territory. The War Master's awareness of Necron infiltration capabilities has led to enhanced security protocols throughout the Black Legion fleet, with demon touch sensors and warp-based detection systems that can identify phase-shifted intruders before they achieve optimal positioning. These countermeasures have been shared with other Chaos warbands, creating a network of defensive measures that significantly complicates future acquisition attempts against high-value Chaos targets. The psychological impact of this failure weighs heavily on Trazyn's consciousness, representing not merely a tactical defeat, but a fundamental challenge to his identity as the galaxy's supreme collector. Abaddon's significance as the architect of Cadia's fall and the leader of the largest Chaos force in the galaxy makes him an irreplaceable specimen whose absence from the collection creates a glaring gap in its historical completeness. The Overlord's obsessive nature transforms this failure into a persistent source of frustration that influences his strategic planning and resource allocation decisions, with significant assets devoted to developing new approaches for acquiring the War Master, despite the obvious risks and resource costs involved. Eldred Ulthrin of Craftworld Ulthway represents another legendary figure whose capture has eluded Trazyn despite multiple carefully planned attempts spanning several centuries. The ancient Farseer's mastery of divination and probability manipulation creates unique challenges that go far beyond the typical difficulties associated with acquiring Eldar targets. Eldred's precognitive abilities operate on temporal scales that match Trazyn's own planning horizons, allowing him to perceive and counter acquisition attempts decades before they reach execution phase. His understanding of the webway and its relationship to real space provides him with escape routes that exist outside normal space-time, making containment extremely difficult even when initial capture attempts succeed in overcoming his defensive measures. The closest Trazyn came to acquiring Eldred occurred during the Farseer's intervention in the 13th Black Crusade, when the ancient Eldar's attention focused entirely on manipulating probability threads to influence the conflict's outcome. Trazyn's agents had positioned specialized probability dampening fields throughout the Cadian system, creating zones where Eldred's divination abilities would be significantly reduced while maintaining the appearance of natural warp storm interference. The extraction team successfully penetrated the Farseer's personal defenses and began deployment of temporal stasis fields around his position aboard a Craftworld vessel operating within the system's outer reaches. The capture attempt failed when Eldred's contingency planning proved more sophisticated than Trazyn's intelligence gathering had revealed. The Farseer had prepared multiple temporal escape routes that activated automatically when his life signs indicated imminent capture, creating a cascade of probability shifts that transported him through several alternate timeline branches before depositing him safely within Ulthway's core chambers. The escape mechanism left behind only a sophisticated psychic construct designed to maintain the appearance of successful capture long enough for the real Eldred to implement broader countermeasures against future Necron acquisition attempts. The failure to capture Eldred has had significant strategic implications beyond the immediate disappointment of losing such a valuable specimen. The Farseer's intimate knowledge of Trazyn's capabilities and methods, gained through their multiple confrontations, has allowed him to develop comprehensive countermeasures that protect not only himself, but other high-value Eldar targets throughout the galaxy. Eldred's warnings to other craftworlds have resulted in enhanced security protocols and specialized training programs that significantly complicate Necron infiltration attempts within Eldar-controlled territory. Phoenix Lord Asurman, the Hand of Asurian and founder of the Aspect warrior tradition, has proven equally elusive despite representing one of the most historically significant figures in the galaxy. His status as the first and greatest of the Phoenix Lords makes him an irresistible target for Trazyn's collection, representing a direct link to the Eldar's ancient past and the development of their post-fall military doctrine. However, Asserman's millennia of combat experience and his unique relationship with the concept of death itself create acquisition challenges that transcend normal tactical considerations. The Phoenix Lord's ability to transfer his consciousness between different physical incarnations complicates any attempt at permanent capture, as destroying his current body simply triggers his resurrection within a new host rather than achieving specimen preservation. Trazyn's attempts to capture Asserman alive have been frustrated by the Phoenix Lord's willingness to trigger his own death rather than submit to capture, while efforts to acquire his iconic armor and weapons have failed due to their psychic bonds with his consciousness. The armor itself demonstrates quasi-sentient behavior that actively resists separation from its intended wearer, creating additional technical challenges for any acquisition attempt. The political ramifications of Trazyn's failed acquisition attempts extend far beyond simple tactical disappointments, creating diplomatic complications that affect his relationships with major galactic powers and influence their strategic responses to his activities. The Imperium's growing awareness of his collection methods has led to the development of specialized counter-Necron protocols within multiple military organizations, while his failures against high-profile targets have emboldened other enemies to attempt similar resistance techniques. These developments have transformed Trazyn from an obscure threat operating in the galaxy's periphery into a recognized strategic concern that requires dedicated resources and attention from major military organizations. Imperial intelligence services have begun systematic analysis of Trazyn's operational patterns and target selection criteria, identifying common elements that allow them to predict and potentially prevent future acquisition attempts. The Ordo Xenos has established specialized task forces dedicated to monitoring sectors where collector activity shows high probability, deploying rapid response teams equipped with temporal stabilization equipment and dimensional anchor systems. These countermeasures have successfully prevented several acquisition attempts against mid-level Imperial targets, though their effectiveness against Trazyn's most sophisticated operations remains limited. The Space Marine chapters have implemented enhanced security protocols for their most historically significant members, including specialized training in counter-infiltration techniques and the deployment of psychic detection systems capable of identifying Necron presence signatures. Several chapters have established dedicated honor guards for their most veteran commanders, with these elite units receiving specialized equipment and training designed specifically to counter Necron acquisition techniques. The Blood Angels have gone so far as to develop contingency plans for the potential capture of their chapter master, including protocols for tracking and recovery operations that could theoretically penetrate even Necron stasis technology. The Adeptus Mechanicus has taken particular interest in Trazyn's activities due to their implications for archaeotech security and the protection of sacred knowledge. Forge worlds throughout the galaxy have enhanced their security measures to prevent unauthorized access to their most valuable technological artifacts, while specialized Skitarii units receive training in identifying and countering Necron infiltration attempts. The Tech Priest's analysis of Trazyn's collection methods has led to the development of quantum encryption systems and probability-based security measures that make their most sensitive facilities significantly more difficult to penetrate. The most significant security breach in Trazyn's collection occurred when a group of preserved Imperial fists managed to escape from their stasis fields during a power fluctuation caused by orbital bombardment from an attacking Orc fleet. The Space Marines' enhanced physiology and mental conditioning allowed them to maintain consciousness during the brief period when their temporal containment failed, providing them with the opportunity to assess their situation and implement escape procedures before backup systems could restore full stasis coverage. Captain Darnath Lysander led the breakout attempt. His tactical expertise and intimate knowledge of Imperial fist doctrine allowing him to coordinate his battle brothers' efforts despite the disorienting effects of their prolonged temporal imprisonment. The escaped Space Marine's knowledge of Solemnace's internal layout and security systems, gained through their periods of consciousness within the stasis fields, allowed them to navigate the Tomb World's labyrinthine gallery networks while avoiding the majority of its automated defenses. Their power armor systems had maintained partial functionality during stasis, providing them with limited mobility and communication capabilities that proved crucial for coordinating their escape attempt. The Marines successfully reached one of Solemnace's surface installations before Canoptech security forces could organize an effective response, though their ultimate fate remains unclear as they disappeared into the Tomb World's defensive perimeter during the ongoing Orc assault. The security implications of this escape forced Trazyn to implement comprehensive reviews of his preservation protocols and containment systems, leading to significant upgrades in stasis, field technology, and monitoring capabilities. The incident revealed fundamental vulnerabilities in his temporal containment methods, particularly regarding subjects with enhanced physiology or specialized training in resistance techniques. New security measures include multiple redundant stasis generators for high-value specimens, continuous monitoring of neural activity levels, and automated containment protocols that can maintain specimen security even during major system failures. The manhunt for the escaped Imperial fists consumed significant resources and revealed additional weaknesses in Solemnace's internal security arrangements. Canoptech constructs proved inadequate for tracking targets with intimate knowledge of the facility's layout and defensive blind spots, while the Tomb World's labyrinthine structure provided numerous concealment opportunities that frustrated systematic search efforts. The incident forced Trazyn to acknowledge that his preservation methods created potential security risks that extended beyond simple containment failures to include the possibility of his specimens gaining actionable intelligence about his operations and capabilities. The psychological impact of successful escapes on Trazyn's remaining specimens has created additional management challenges that require constant attention and resource allocation. Word of successful breakout attempts spreads through the collection despite the isolation of individual stasis fields, creating hope and determination among preserved subjects that manifests as increased resistance to containment protocols. The knowledge that escape remains possible, however remote, provides psychological anchors that help maintain identity coherence while simultaneously making specimens more likely to attempt their own breakout efforts during system vulnerabilities. These escape attempts have revealed the extent to which Trazyn's preserved subjects retain their original personalities and motivations despite their temporal imprisonment. Space Marines continue to plan tactical operations and maintain unit cohesion even while individually contained in separate stasis fields, while Imperial Guard officers attempt to coordinate resistance efforts through subtle communication methods that exploit minor fluctuations in their containment systems. The preservation of consciousness that Trazyn considers essential for his specimen's historical value also ensures that they remain active threats to collection security who require constant monitoring and countermeasures. The failure to recapture escaped specimens has forced Trazyn to confront the limitations of his collection philosophy and the practical challenges of maintaining such an extensive preservation operation. Each successful escape represents not only the loss of a valuable specimen, but also a potential intelligence breach that could compromise future acquisition operations. Escaped subjects carry detailed knowledge of Necron technology, facility layouts, and operational procedures that could prove invaluable to enemy forces seeking to counter his activities or launch direct assaults against Solemnace itself. The development of counter-escape protocols has become a major focus of Trazyn's technological research efforts, with specialized teams of cryptechs working to develop improved containment systems that can maintain specimen security while preserving the consciousness levels necessary for historical authenticity. These efforts have produced hybrid stasis systems that combine temporal manipulation with psychic dampening fields and neural interface technology, creating multi-layered containment that addresses both physical and mental escape attempts. However, the complexity of these new systems creates additional potential failure points that could be exploited by sufficiently determined or knowledgeable subjects. The resource costs associated with preventing escapes and recapturing lost specimens have begun to affect Trazyn's ability to pursue new acquisitions, creating opportunity costs that force difficult decisions about collection priorities and security investments. The allocation of significant assets to containment security reduces the resources available for intelligence gathering, infiltration operations, and the technological development necessary to counter increasingly sophisticated enemy countermeasures. This resource competition has forced Trazyn to become more selective in his acquisition targets, focusing on specimens whose historical value justifies the security risks and maintenance costs they represent. The failures and escapes that mark Trazyn's collection career serve to fuel his obsession rather than diminish it, transforming each setback into motivation for more elaborate and sophisticated acquisition schemes. The psychological impact of these failures creates a feedback loop that drives increasingly risky operations and resource commitments, as the Overlord's compulsive nature demands that he overcome the challenges that have frustrated his previous efforts. This escalating commitment to collection activities has begun to affect his broader strategic planning and his relationships with other Necron nobles, who view his growing obsession with concern and occasionally open criticism. The development of more sophisticated acquisition methods in response to previous failures has led to technological innovations that advance Necron science while creating new operational capabilities for future collection efforts. Temporal manipulation techniques developed to counter Eldar precognitive abilities have applications beyond specimen acquisition, while dimensional phase technology, refined through failed infiltration attempts, provides enhanced capabilities for military operations and strategic reconnaissance. These technological advances ensure that even failed collection attempts contribute to Trazyn's long-term capabilities, though the resource costs involved in their development continue to strain his operational budgets and limit his strategic flexibility. The question of what would become of Trazyn's vast collection, should he ever meet his final destruction, haunts the deeper recesses of Solemnace's command protocols, where contingency programs written in the earliest days of his awakening continue to evolve and adapt according to parameters that even their creator no longer fully comprehends. These automated systems represent perhaps the most sophisticated preservation protocols ever developed, designed to ensure that the collection's integrity remains intact regardless of external threats or the fate of its curator. The complexity of these contingencies reflects Trazyn's understanding that his own immortality, while extensive, cannot be considered absolute in a galaxy where beings of godlike power wage eternal war across dimensions that transcend normal concepts of life and death. The primary preservation protocol involves the complete isolation of Solemnace from normal space-time through dimensional phase technology that would effectively remove the tomb world from the galaxy's physical reality. This emergency measure would trigger automatically upon detecting Trazyn's permanent destruction, creating a pocket dimension where the collection could exist in perfect stasis until such time as conditions allow for its eventual recovery. The energy requirements for maintaining such extensive dimensional isolation would drain Solemnace's power reserves over the course of several millennia, but specialized systems have been designed to gradually reduce the scope of preservation to focus on the most historically significant specimens as resources diminish. Secondary protocols involve the selective activation of preserved specimens according to predetermined criteria that prioritize their potential for independent survival and their likelihood of continuing Trazyn's preservation mission. These awakening sequences would begin with the most strategically capable individuals in the collection, providing them with sufficient resources and information to establish defensive positions, while gradually reviving additional specimens based on their complementary skills and historical significance. The resulting community of awakened beings would represent a cross-section of galactic civilization, unlike anything that has ever existed, bringing together heroes and villains from across the millennia in a shared struggle for survival. The practical implications of such mass revivals create scenarios that strain the imagination, even by the standards of the 41st millennium's endless impossibilities. Space Marine captains from different chapters and eras would find themselves forced to cooperate with Chaos Lords, Eldar Autarchs, and Orc warbosses in defending their shared sanctuary against external threats. The cultural and ideological conflicts inherent in such arrangements would create internal tensions that could prove as dangerous as any external enemy, with ancient grudges and fundamental philosophical differences threatening to tear apart any temporary alliances born of necessity. The command structure for such a diverse group would require unprecedented flexibility and diplomatic sophistication, as traditional military hierarchies break down when confronted with beings whose authority derives from entirely different cultural contexts and historical periods. A Tau commander's technological expertise might prove crucial for maintaining Solemnace's systems, while an Imperial Guard colonel's tactical knowledge could be essential for coordinating defensive operations, yet neither would naturally accept subordination to the other based on their respective military traditions. The resolution of these conflicts would depend largely on the emergence of natural leaders whose personal charisma and demonstrated competence transcend their original cultural contexts. The awakened specimens would inherit not only their freedom, but also access to Trazyn's vast archives of galactic intelligence and historical records, creating opportunities for understanding that extend far beyond their original temporal contexts. An Imperial fist captain from the Great Crusade era would gain access to detailed records of his legion's subsequent history, including the Horus Heresy and the 10 millennia of warfare that followed. Eldar Farseers would discover the ultimate fate of their craftworlds and the long-term consequences of their species' decline. Orc warbosses would learn of wars that dwarfed their own achievements, while Chaos Lords would gain insights into the broader schemes of their patron deities. This unprecedented access to historical knowledge would fundamentally alter the awakened beings' understanding of their place in the galaxy and their relationships with their original cultures and loyalties. The revelation that the Imperium they served has become a decaying theocracy might drive some Space Marines to despair, while others could find new purpose in attempting to restore the Emperor's original vision. Eldar who discover the extent of their species' decline might dedicate themselves to reversing that fate, while others could embrace nihilistic acceptance of their people's inevitable extinction. The psychological impact of such revelations would create new motivations and goals that transcend the being's original purposes and identities. The technological resources available to the awakened specimens would include not only Trazyn's collection of advanced artifacts, but also the manufacturing capabilities of Solemnace itself, potentially allowing them to create new technologies that combine the best elements of different civilizations' achievements. Necron construction techniques could be merged with Imperial engineering principles, while Eldar psychic sciences might be integrated with Tau technological innovations to produce capabilities that no single civilization could achieve independently. The collaborative potential of such cross-cultural technological exchange could revolutionize galactic civilization if the awakened beings could overcome their cultural prejudices and historical animosities. The defensive capabilities of an awakened Solemnace would represent a formidable challenge to any force attempting to conquer or destroy the Tomb World and its inhabitants. The combination of Necron technology with the tactical expertise of the galaxy's greatest military leaders could create defensive systems that surpass even the most sophisticated fortress worlds in their effectiveness. Space Marine knowledge of siege warfare could be combined with Eldar understanding of probability manipulation and Necron mastery of dimensional science to create multi-layered defenses that operate across multiple planes of existence simultaneously. The strategic implications of releasing such a concentration of military expertise and historical knowledge into the galaxy would create ripple effects that could alter the balance of power between major factions for millennia to come. The awakened specimens would carry with them not only their personal capabilities, but also detailed intelligence about the strengths, weaknesses, and internal politics of every major galactic power. This information advantage could prove decisive in future conflicts, as beings with intimate knowledge of Imperial military doctrine, chaos corruption techniques, and Xeno's capabilities share their insights with whichever factions they ultimately choose to support. The question of loyalty and allegiance among the awakened specimens would create complex political dynamics that could reshape galactic civilization in unpredictable ways. Some individuals might remain faithful to their original causes despite the revelations contained within Trazyn's archives, while others could undergo fundamental philosophical transformations that lead them to embrace entirely new purposes. The shared experience of temporal imprisonment and forced cooperation during their awakening could create bonds that transcend their original cultural identities, potentially giving rise to new factions and alliances that operate according to principles derived from their unique historical perspective. The cultural exchange between beings from different eras and civilizations would accelerate the development of new philosophical and religious movements that incorporate elements from across the galaxy's diverse traditions. Imperial Guard officers might find wisdom in Tau concepts of the greater good, while Eldar Farseers could discover unexpected insights in Orc approaches to warfare and survival. These cross-cultural pollination effects could produce hybrid belief systems and social structures that represent genuine innovations in galactic civilization, offering alternatives to the stagnant orthodoxies that currently dominate most major factions. The preservation of knowledge and culture that Trazyn has achieved through his collection activities represents one of the most comprehensive archives of galactic civilization ever assembled, containing detailed records of societies, technologies, and individuals that would otherwise be lost to the destructive forces of constant warfare. His galleries house examples of artistic achievement, technological innovation, and cultural development from civilizations that vanished millennia ago, preserving not only their physical artifacts, but also the living representatives who embody their values and capabilities. This vast repository of cultural heritage serves as an inadvertent bulwark against the homogenizing forces of imperial expansion and the destructive influence of chaos corruption. The scientific value of Trazyn's collection extends far beyond simple historical curiosity to encompass genetic samples, technological specifications, and cultural practices that could prove crucial for the long-term survival of various species and civilizations. His preserved specimens include individuals whose genetic lineages represent irreplaceable diversity within their respective species, while his technological artifacts contain manufacturing techniques and scientific principles that could revolutionize current understanding in multiple fields. The loss of this knowledge through the collection's destruction would impoverish galactic civilization in ways that might not become apparent for centuries. The role of Trazyn as an inadvertent preserver extends beyond his conscious collection activities to include the secondary effects of his interventions in galactic events. His removal of key figures from historical moments has sometimes prevented their deaths in battles they were destined to lose, effectively preserving bloodlines and knowledge that would otherwise have been eliminated. Similarly, his acquisition of technological artifacts has protected them from destruction during planetary bombardments or chaos corruption, ensuring their survival for potential future recovery and study. The irony of a Necron Lord serving as the galaxy's most dedicated cultural preservationist highlights the complex relationship between the ancient mechanical race and the organic civilizations they theoretically seek to destroy. Trazyn's activities demonstrate that Necron consciousness retains the capacity for appreciation and wonder that characterized their original Necrontyr existence, suggesting that the biotransference process did not completely eliminate the curiosity and aesthetic sensibility that drove their ancient civilization's scientific and cultural achievements. His collection represents a form of rebellion against the nihilistic destructiveness that defines most Necron activities, preserving examples of the very diversity and creativity that his species' awakening threatens to eliminate. The question of whether Trazyn represents the last vestige of Necrontyr curiosity or simply another form of corruption reflects deeper uncertainties about the nature of Necron consciousness and the extent to which their original personalities survive the biotransference process. His obsessive collecting behavior could be interpreted as a preservation of the scientific curiosity that characterized the Necrontyr's golden age, when their civilization achieved remarkable advances in technology and culture before the cancer plague drove them to desperate measures. Alternatively, his activities might represent a fundamental corruption of that curiosity, transforming healthy intellectual interest into pathological obsession that reduces living beings to static museum pieces. The distinction between preservation and corruption becomes particularly relevant when examining the methods Trazyn employs to maintain his collection and the suffering these techniques inflict on his preserved specimens. The consciousness that remains active within his stasis fields experiences a form of torture that would be considered abhorrent by any civilization possessed of moral sensibilities. Yet Trazyn views this suffering as an acceptable cost for achieving historical preservation. This utilitarian calculus suggests that his consciousness has been fundamentally altered by the biotransference process, replacing empathy and ethical consideration with cold logical analysis that prioritizes abstract goals over individual welfare. The technological sophistication of Trazyn's preservation methods demonstrates that Necron science has continued to advance during their long dormancy, with innovations in temporal manipulation and dimensional engineering that surpass even their War in Heaven-era capabilities. These advances suggest that Necron consciousness retains the intellectual capacity for scientific progress and creative problem-solving that characterized their original civilization, though these capabilities now serve purposes that their Necrontyr ancestors might have found incomprehensible or morally repugnant. The development of new technologies for specimen preservation and gallery construction represents genuine scientific achievement, even as it serves goals that most organic civilizations would consider fundamentally evil. The isolation of Trazyn from mainstream Necron society reflects the extent to which his collecting activities have diverged from orthodox dynastic priorities and objectives. His fellow overlords view his preservation of organic specimens with suspicion and occasionally open hostility, considering such activities to be distractions from their species' rightful destiny of galactic reconquest. This philosophical divide suggests that the biotransference process affected individual Necron consciousness in different ways, with some retaining elements of their original curiosity and intellectual interests, while others embraced the nihilistic destructiveness that characterizes most awakened dynasties. The legacy of Trazyn the Infinite extends far beyond his personal collection to encompass the broader implications of his activities for galactic civilization and the future development of interspecies relationships. His work demonstrates that cooperation and mutual understanding between different civilizations remain possible even in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, though such cooperation typically requires the intervention of beings whose perspectives transcend normal temporal and cultural limitations. The knowledge and specimens he has preserved could serve as the foundation for new forms of interspecies collaboration that transcend the destructive conflicts that currently define galactic politics. As the galaxy spirals toward ever greater levels of destruction and chaos, Trazyn's collection stands as a monument to what has been achieved and what might yet be possible if the destructive forces of war and corruption could be overcome. His galleries contain not only examples of individual excellence, but also demonstrations of the creative potential that emerges when different civilizations interact peacefully rather than through conquest and domination. The preservation of this potential for future generations represents perhaps the most significant contribution that any individual has made to galactic civilization, regardless of the questionable methods employed to achieve it. The ultimate fate of Trazyn and his collection remains uncertain, subject to the same forces of entropy and destruction that threaten all achievements in the 41st millennium. Yet the very existence of his preservation efforts demonstrates that the capacity for wonder, curiosity, and cultural appreciation survives even in the galaxy's darkest corners, offering hope that these qualities might someday triumph over the destructive impulses that currently dominate galactic civilization. Whether Trazyn represents the last flickering ember of Necrontyr enlightenment, or the first sign of a new form of consciousness that could bridge the gap between organic and mechanical existence, his legacy will endure as long as a single specimen remains preserved within the infinite galleries of Solemnace.